Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a great lunch, because after this we have a very interesting discussion. So we're going to be talking about the state of cryptocurrency media, accountability or otherwise. So to start this afternoon session, we have a great panel, and let me just call you Steven the Millionaire, the Director of International Partnerships, PundiX, and our speakers, Nai, content creator and influencer, and Ryan Lai, founder, Crypto Grinders.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steven, and this is Nai here.
What's up, everybody?
And Ryan from Crypto Grinders.
Hey, everyone.
And yeah, we're here to have a chat about the state of cryptocurrency media. As you know, the industry is just changing so much. The whole media industry is being influenced by social media and many of the channels and platforms that are seemingly popping up on a daily basis. So I'd like to just, it's not really about the state of cryptocurrency media so much as what's your take on cryptocurrency media, where is it going, all those kinds of things. And so we're going to have a very free-flowing discussion about that. And we also encourage you to have some questions ready, and I'd like to open it up to you as well, too, to ask some questions with these guys. Because I'm sure, and I'd like to see a show of hands from you who use or consume cryptocurrency media on a daily basis. Are you subscribed? Do you spend more than an hour a day reviewing the media? And I'd like to know more about that as well too. And so with these guys. So let's start with some questions then, right? Tell us about yourself, Nai.
Awesome, cool. What's up, everybody? My name is Nai, and pretty much I create content online. My main platform is Twitter. I use YouTube, Telegram, Instagram as well. I also run a marketing company that pretty much provides social media solutions and community building solutions to crypto startups and established companies in the space. And yeah, that's pretty much me, what I do.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ryan, co-founder of Crypto Grinders. So how I started out was, literally, I left the banking industry after 6.5 years, called it quits. Used to be a relationship manager, handle high net worth clients, and then after that, I decided, hey, you know what? There's only so much growth that I can have in already legacy space, right? So I told myself, let's move out. I discovered cryptocurrencies through one of my internet marketing, during my internet marketing journey, Bitcoin in particular. So I said, what is this all about? I decided, okay, I think there is a speculative element, and I noticed that a lot of people were trading cryptocurrencies, right? Not just using it as a form of, moving money around. It was a whole ecosystem that was already up. So I said, okay, I have to delve into it a little bit more. And when I started creating content, I was just transferring whatever I knew from banking and finance and helping my viewers at the time understand what risk was all about, how to trade cryptocurrencies. From there, I decided to build a business around it. We are now focused on marketing and media. We are also in consultations with various projects. And at the same time, we are here to also educate the public about creating a portfolio, how to invest in cryptocurrencies, and is there a long-term value in this whole space. That being said, it has been a very fun journey. I built a little team, and this team is just moving around with me. We're just discovering what the space is all about. Yeah, so pretty psyched up to be here.
Great. So, Nai, how did you get started?
Well, I bought my first Bitcoin like 2012, 2013, just for fun, because we were in college and messing around, and then the space came back to me back in 2017, and I got really interested in it. Specifically, I got back from Burning Man, and my buddy was like, "Yo, man, I'm getting into cryptocurrency," and I was like, "Yeah, I know about crypto, I know about Bitcoin, but I don't know a lot about it." So jumped right in about middle of 2017, started spending 10, 12, 15 hours a day, depending upon the day, studying how to trade and things like that. And then I saw that there was a really big need in the media space, specifically on Twitter and with the personalities in the space communicating with their audience. And I decided back in March of this year, let's jump on it, and I've had a great response so far.
Okay, so you started just in March of this year, because I thought you were already, been in it for a long time.
No, I mean, creating content, it started in March. Yeah. I built up this profile, started talking to people, started to do it the way that I would do it rather than the way that I saw other people doing it. And yeah, people responded really well, and it's blown up.
And Ryan, how long have you been producing media as well?
Yeah, so I started out purely on YouTube, just like everyone else. Started from my dining table, in fact, with a $1,200 laptop. Just started talking about the markets, and from there, I'm now also on Twitter, on Instagram, and this whole social media thing is actually very new to me. So I started basically in March of 2017. Yeah, so yeah, but hey, starting out in March is actually an eternity in crypto, man. Just say.
Absolutely, but I'd also like to know how the big drop at the end of January affected what you were doing, or influenced what you were doing
this is
as
gonna
well.
be fun.
Well,
yeah, go for it.
The interesting thing is, like, I started all my content in March, so the majority of what I've built up is in the middle of a bear market. Now, I know that other people who started earlier have talked about how there's less views and things like that. I just haven't really experienced it because I've been in a bear market the whole time. But yeah.
It's an excellent point, because when you build something, especially in the bear market, when the hype has all died down, right? That's when you know where the true content creators and service providers are going to be. So, I think I respect for the fact that he came in literally in March, right? That's when the dip started to get really heavy. So for us, right, yes, in terms of the views and subscribers, it did suffer because everyone was just hyped up in 2017. Like, you could just be a kid talking about cryptocurrencies, just looking at CoinMarketCap, and you'd be like a god. But as that hype died down and people started losing money, that's when you realize they are going to start looking for avenues on how to save their portfolios. And that's why we are still continuing to create content, we're still continuing to educate, and it's literally just discovering the space. Yeah, so far we're fine. I think in terms of revenue for the company is still actually very healthy. So yeah, I think it's the best time to build for me.
Yeah, I love the bear market.
Yeah, man.
I mean, even to feed off of what you just said, like, the fact of the matter is, the bear market's the best time to build, but it's also like seeing this huge spike and seeing how it dropped really kind of made me even more aware of how massive this really is, the whole blockchain industry, the whole crypto space, and how early we really are. Like, we're really in the beginning. Yes, there's still speculation. Yes, things may or may not actually work out. We don't really know for a fact, but I choose to believe that we're in the very beginning of a brand new multi-trillion-dollar industry. And the only reason only reason I started was I wanted to approach something beyond investing, and I wanted to have something beyond investing to contribute to the space. And to build for the next 5-10 years,
Yeah, I mean, I think for the company, especially right now, there are a lot of people that want to get involved still. But from a retail perspective, right, they're still lacking education, right? And the reason why it's going to be a $1 trillion market is that the fiat money is not in yet. And why the fiat money is not in? Because a lot of the previous retail investors, they are clearly waiting for custodial services, and that's where you're seeing that happen. It's already currently unfolding, and when you can take that inconvenience and that insecurity away from them, then you will see that $1 trillion market cap happen. And for now, I think the only thing, at least when I'm telling my folks, you got to look at looking at long term. You know, and also at the same time, what kind of long-term value can all these projects really have? You got to be really connected, and that's why the community, the influencers, what kind of content is out there, who are you following? I think that's the accountability, I think, for the both of us, you know, because as much as you like to share and talk about a particular project, sometimes we are being accused of, say, pumping or dumping, but you know, for us, we've always been very, very segregated in the information that we provide, because we have a private group, and at the same time, whatever we share with the public, we keep it very general. But in the private group, we are always managing the expectations, because we know that this space needs at least 5-10 years to develop. So how are you going to expect a return in the next 2 or 3 days? I don't get it, right? That's the immaturity of the space, and it's frustrating, because being from wealth, you know, a wealth banking background, you're always at least telling your clients what kind of risk to expect, how much money they could potentially lose. But in this space, it's like, do your own research, as say DYOR, but what does that actually mean, you know? So if you want to see the whole space evolve, I think it's everything moving in tandem. And that's kind of like where we see ourselves moving in the future as well.
But do you feel that you got caught up in the excitement and the hype that was starting to build around this time last year? You know, I don't have a media channel, but I would post about cryptocurrencies on Facebook, and then as soon as the snowball started to roll downhill, it was hard to not be excited. Did you feel that there were times where you were like feeling really excited about what was going on in the industry as the price was starting to rise, or did you really have to pull yourself back to be sure that you were staying on an even keel? I mean, it's really hard to do, right? It happens in mainstream media as well, of course.
I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes. Like, anybody who was involved like last year during the hype phase and says they weren't caught up in hype is most likely lying, you know? Like, everybody was making stupid amounts of money stupid quickly. You could buy any coin, like from an investment perspective, you could buy any coin at any point you wanted, wake up the next morning and be up like 30 to 50% minimum. And yeah, it's hard not to get delusional in those senses, and I think a lot of people learned a lot of lessons from mistakes being made in the end of January, February, when things started to fall off. But yeah, totally caught up in the hype, not a question.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we made stupid amounts of money in 2017, and just being dumb in 2016 was the best time, right? So when it happened, okay, I was actually, to be honest, because I'm a father of two, and I've seen this kind of stuff happen because I was in the finance, like I said, I was in finance a while. So when I saw these kind of parabolic returns, I was thinking, how sustainable is all this stuff? But obviously, when there is momentum, you keep pushing, right? And there was momentum. When you make money, we would always make sure that, okay, we always kept the viewers. I was always telling my viewers, right, you get excited, make sure you know what you're doing, cash out, you know, because you don't know how sustainable this all is. And after a while, you notice that a lot of projects right now, they're not really doing very well, you know, and those were like the flavor of the last month or last week. But it's starting to happen again. That's the very interesting thing, right? You're seeing all this, you know, pumps, you know, 20-30% starting to happen again. So is this the start of a new cycle? You know, I'm very curious myself. So we're just making sure that we are in the right place at the right time always, right? So
can I ask about revenue and how, you know, you don't have to say about all your revenue streams, but you know, it's been a bear market now since March, since you got started, Nice. So but you're making money doing this, right? You know, and how does that you know, how does that happen? Is it allowing you to grow, or how is it affecting your businesses?
I think the thing that I want to touch on there is, like, yes, I'm making money. I'm not really investing heavily. You know, March was actually like a decent month. March and April was pretty decent, but I'm not really heavily investing in the financial aspect of buying cryptos and waiting for them to move and things like that. I do have a few positions, but the thing that I am investing in is I'm investing my time, my energy, and my attention into the space itself. So the fact of the matter is, if you're just an investor, that's great, that's fantastic, but like, I highly encourage and would even say it's necessary for every person in this room to figure out what they can actually contribute to the blockchain space, to the environment, to these conferences, to whatever it is that you're interested in here, because The fact of the matter is, if you can position yourself well in this industry now, you're going to be very, very set up over the next 5 to 10 years. You're going to be yeah, just really well set up, and you'll have a good position for whatever you want to execute on and whatever you want to do. Like right now is literally the greatest opportunity. Forget the financial aspect of buying Bitcoin at $6,000. Right now is like the greatest opportunity to make life-changing money in terms of like just the financial aspect, but B, also make a legacy. Like create something that's going to actually impact other people, impact an entire space, and impact the lives of others.
Yeah.
Yep. So with regards to your question, as you mentioned, I think revenue is actually very important, especially if you're starting a business, you're starting out. I think every company at the moment in this space is struggling with that aspect of actually creating a product that people want. So for us, from the very get-go, education was the main bulk of it. So people would join on a monthly basis based on a subscription, not because they wanted to know what to buy, but more of why are we buying it? Why are we trading it, and how to trade it, right? And all these skills you can actually incorporate and bring it onto any kind of financial aspect or any other kind of market. And that's why people still come, even during the bear market. Especially right now, when you are looking at a solution, right? You have to understand what was the root cause or what's the root problem. So these are the things that we advocate when we created our company. And at the same time, when you're talking about marketing aspects, right? There are companies out there that really want to deliver a story, right? And sometimes they do not know how to market the company their company very well. That's how we can help them out. And being that we've already built a base in the space, we do command a certain level of influence, but I think the most important thing is to reach out outside of the space. Because if you're a credible company, that means you are not worried about how people think about your product. Because I think the whole space has evolved to the point that you can now have a connection and a conversation with the founders. I think in the previous era where you're talking about stocks and shares, if you're not an angel investor, if you're not a growth fund, you're not a VC, you don't get a chance to speak to any of all these people. Right now, if you're an 18-year-old kid, or at least you can make some money, and you're going to put in $100 into a particular ICO, the CEO, CFO will just talk to you in the Telegram chat. I think that's very nice. It's a very nice thing to do, and you are already creating a legacy just by doing that as a company. Now for us, we are also doing that. We are having our own Telegram group. It's 6,000 strong. It grew from scratch. What we are always constantly doing is just making sure that they know what they're doing. Sometimes we are just so concerned. Like I said, I'm a parent. So as a parent, you're always making sure that your kids are going to grow up right in the space. Same thing. I want to make sure that anyone who's coming into the space, as they say, a fool is born every second, right? And I don't want people in my community to be that fool. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about platforms more. The medium is the message, and the different platforms that you produce media for. The messages have to be crafted for that particular medium. Some of them are really obvious, like Twitter, where you have a very strict limitation in how much you can present. Other platforms present other kinds of limitations. Maybe not all of us are using or are connected to every single channel that this media is coming down. I mean, you talk about Telegram, and there are a lot of people. I'm still educating a lot of people about Telegram, for example, or Twitter, which I really don't like using. I find it's too fast for me. So I'd like you to talk about the different platforms that you use for your media, what you think works for you, or if you've changed midstream. I mean, perhaps you started with producing for one kind of platform and then switched to a different one later on that was more suited to how you wanted to present media. I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean, Twitter's been the most effective for me personally. I love Twitter. It's the way that I get a lot of information, not just about the markets and things like that, but I get a lot of information about what people are thinking about the markets, which is the most relevant. You know, where people's heads are at, where their emotions are at. If you can learn about what other people are going through in a specific time period, you can kind of see what the mass population is thinking, and from there you can kind of actually see a lot of where the where the market might move in the future. So from a financial perspective, I like that. Even from a content creation perspective, I like that. I get to see what people are talking about in real time, constantly live, saying, hey, I really like this piece of content, I really like this tweet, and I kind of get to analyze why people are tweeting things and what is effective, what isn't. I also like Twitter because it is literally the most real platform, and what I mean by that is you can actually connect with your audience real time any second you want. I get 5-10 messages a day minimum in private messages on Twitter. I get to respond to all those people. I get tons of replies to all of my tweets. I get to jump on there and I get to have responses with them. And you create relationships with people, even if you've never seen their face, even if it's just an alternate avatar on there. And I think that's what's really effective with like actually building community and actually getting people that care about you beyond what coin you just called, or how much money you made them, and things like that.
The main social media channel that we are using right now is YouTube. Twitter-wise, I think YouTube has been really phenomenal in terms of just helping me grab and build an audience. It's still the best way to learn because I'm a visual learner from the very get-go, right? And I think a lot of people could kind of relate because I'm someone who's pretty animated, especially in front of the camera. And I told myself that I don't write, right? So I don't do any writing and whatnot. So how am I going to get my message out there? So YouTube was the very first platform. I had really sucky videos. If you look at the channel right now, it is miles away from where it used to be. But you know what? That I can thank my team for. But how it started out was just taking that camera in front, just putting a camera or phone or whatever in front and just sitting in front of my couch and just talking about how I feel about stuff. And that's just how it all started. And then after that, you know, we realized that different people would relate to different kind of social media platforms differently. So there are people who just enjoy the whole lifestyle of how it's like to be in cryptocurrency or being a trader or whatnot. So we have a little bit of Instagram going on. But I think at the end of the day, you know, I learned a lot from his little comments alone. His comments alone were actually like, wow, okay, it's just faster to do through Twitter. And yes, we do have a little Twitter that's being built up at the moment. But I think at the end of the day, we're still using YouTube as the best, as the form of social media for us.
And I think like the interesting thing even there is like, all platforms are so different. Yeah. Like like to manage and be successful on all platforms is a real skill. Like I admire all the YouTube people because I'm like, oh damn, like you got 100,000 subscribers and 10,000 views a video. Like I don't even understand the ins and outs of it. I'm learning, but I don't understand it. And I think that's what's kind of cool about the media in the crypto space is, like you said, there's people that are visual learners. They'll jump on YouTube and things like that. There's people that just want information quickly. They'll jump on Twitter. And it's just a change of pace depending on what people like.
But I've been following you on Twitter for a long time, but actually I prefer reading your Medium posts.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've also been following you on YouTube as well, too. But I know it's hard to, you know, they changed the algorithm, about 9 months ago on YouTube, and I know a lot of other people, you know, that have channels that were making a living from those channels that all of a sudden were in really great difficulties. So how do you stand out, you know, when centralized media systems like that can sort of change the algorithm on you that makes it difficult for people to find you? How do you reestablish, you know, get back in front of people and stand out from others that are clamoring to become media providers as well?
I think this is a very good question, Stefan. Right now, actually, we are just making sure that we maintain, if not improve, the quality. Right? The sentiment of the market at the moment also does affect the searches, although the algorithms do play a part. But I think at the end of the day, the overall interest has to still be kept high. Right? And also the kind of demographics that you're trying to reach out to. So as long as you continue to create content that people want, at the end of the day, you will still rank pretty high regardless of whether or not it's a bear market or not. I think just keep the whole space relevant. I think there are certain YouTubers that I know that were previously just full on crypto. After that, when the whole cryptocurrency market died, they switched to gaming or something like that, and then now they just basically disappeared from the face of social media. But anyway, that being said, I actually used to be just a Facebook guy, and even that was pretty dead. So I'm now like, so much full on YouTube, just trying to learn and understand. I'm learning every day, actually.
Great. Well, I want to ask you, the audience, if any of you have any questions. I think we can take one or two now, and then we'll go back to our discussion as well, too. All right.
That's a great question. So, I'll repeat that. So pretty much he asked, is it okay for influencers to cover different projects in the space? And if so, do they always have to talk about them in a positive light, or can they be transparent and honest? I think it's okay. I do believe that, one, you need to disclose it if you've been paid. I think that's a requirement. Influencers that don't share that they've been paid, put their following at risk, their followers at risk in terms of like investments and things like that. And I also I think that transparency is the key. So that's a great question. I really believe that if you're going to talk about a project, you talk about all aspects of it. You talk about the potential of it as well as the potential downfall of it. And it's interesting because I like being in the position of writing content about different companies. You're in an interesting position because you have a large amount of influence, and you obviously want to do a good job for the company, but you obviously also want to be honest and open with your audience. But I really believe that if you're transparent and you're always honest with your audience, that's how you play the long game, And yeah, so that's my answer.
Practically, Nai just nailed it, right? We've always been very transparent with whether or not we're paid or not, right? And at the end of the day, when we are paid, right, we will always give a disclaimer to the company that we have the right to ask any questions we want, right? We're not going to ask questions because you want these questions to be there, right? So we've always been like that. If you watch every single interview, we're always kind of being a little bit sarcastic sometimes because we kind of know that the project doesn't have what it's claiming it has. At the same time, also when we have influence, right, over our viewers, our investors, or whatnot, I think we bear that shoulder of responsibility. And I think if you're going to continue to grow in the space as an influencer, you have to just make sure you have that strong transparency and credibility. I've always been like that, so it's not difficult actually.
Yeah, and I think it's up to the influencers to, I'm not really a big fan of that term. I think it's up to the content creators to really set the standard for what the things that they do promote on their channel. I think there's a lot of people that just take the money and they say, oh, it's money, I'm going to tweet about it. They don't really do deep research on it, things like that. If a company ever approaches me about doing a paid promotion on my channel for their thing, first off, I spend hours looking at what they're actually doing. I dive deep into it, and I say, I look at it and I say, look, this is either something that I might potentially do, and if it's a potential, then I'll look at it even deeper, and if not, I'll just be like, look, guys, it's not something that I want on my channel. It's not something that I believe in. And I think that's really the key, is too many people are playing the short-term game. Too many content creators and influencers are playing the short-term game and saying, how much money can I make right now while the hype is big and while the hype's good? And not enough people are saying, look at the potential of where I could be, or what I'm creating could be in the next 5 or 10 years. Forget the fucking $5,000 they want to pay me right now for an article. This isn't a project that I would support. It's not something that I like. Pass.
So you're not a paid shill then?
No, I mean, a paid shill is like a very interesting term, you know, because there are a lot of people on Twitter that will literally just shill anything and everything, and that's what I would call a paid shill. I have been paid to do promotions, but they're only on companies that I will sit here and bet my entire reputation on, and that I believe in them, I believe in their team, I believe in what they're building, and I believe in the innovation behind their project. So yeah, I'm very, very, very specific about companies that I do work with in that aspect.
That's great. And how do you choose clients or people that you work with, or story, you know, who you cover and so on?
Okay, so for us, it's usually very straightforward because I have a team that understands tech, and at the same time they are very strong in business. So when we look at the white paper, right, we kind of also want to ask ourselves, how relevant is this concept now? Is this actually going to be solving a problem, or it's actually just creating a problem, or pretending there's a problem that's non-existent? Okay. Then after that, once we dive deeper into it, we start looking at the teams. I think great teams are being built because these people have experience. Now, that being said, doesn't mean that we don't give a chance to fresh startup companies that do not understand the space, right? Sometimes having a team, a young team that has no experience but they have a great idea, sometimes they just fail in the marketing aspect, but it doesn't mean that they cannot create a great product. Then you have a product. Sometimes you have a company full of marketers and zero tech, right? So that's where the real investigative work comes in. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to be putting our own, and usually we always put in our own money first, right? And once we put in our own money first, then we'll really see whether or not, okay, we see whether the market can mature around this particular project. And when I look at it as a whole, these are the little things that a lot of people don't bother because they want to know what I think, right? And there's always this question, what do you think about this token? What do you think? Then I'll just tell them, I don't know. Because I'm someone who is just so fixated on how this space is evolving, at least from where's the best smart contract protocol? Where's the best network that can really perform all this kind of stuff? There are not many. Everyone's just copying each other. And that's something that a tech guy who doesn't even know tech, I don't even know how to code a word, okay, of any kind of development or whatever. But if I can understand it, you should be able to understand it. And if I can't even understand your project, that means you're probably blowing up smoke up my ass, and you're hoping that, you know, I'm dumb enough to communicate this to my users, which I'm not, right? So that's why I always have other people to cross-validate what I'm doing. And we work with other companies who know tech, who will take a look at it. And I think that's the whole idea. It's just partnering up with everybody and just making sure that we form alliances.
Great. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Willie? So we have to stop very soon as well. I'll just say the question there because Willie went on for a bit, but it's yeah, Willie's is a content creator as well, and he's asking about you know, as media starts to go mainstream and they start to generate more and more money, how do they maintain their accountability to the public as well too, who are consuming it, and as they start to branch out into other sources of revenue like these conferences that the media, these mainstream media organizations or mainstream crypto media organizations are starting to do. So that was also my last question as well. Is really great.
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the audience needs to demand transparency. You know, I think that's kind of where it comes down to, and I think it comes down to that in just beyond your question, in like the whole industry in general, because you know, if you sit on Twitter, you sit on many of these media outlets, you'll see people talking about, oh, we don't want government regulation, we don't want this, we don't want that. Well, you have to add, like, there has to be some sort of regulation, there has to be some sort of standard that companies are held up to, whether it's an ICO, whether it's a media company, whether it's an influencer or content creator in the space. There has to be some sort of standard that's held up. Now, either you sit back and you don't do anything and you trust that they're going to hold themselves up to their own standard, and like you said, as it becomes closer to the trillion-dollar industry and even a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and more money's on the table, it relies on the question of, do we want to just sit back and not trust people on this, or just trust people on this and not how that works? I'm not exactly sure yet, but it's a topic that I've been brainstorming for a while. But yeah, as soon as the audience and the people that are investing their money into ICOs, as soon as they start to demand transparency from these projects, from these content creators, from these media outsources, the whole space is going to change. And I think that when that happens, as long as it's not too late, which I'm not really sure on, the government regulations and government entities might not come down and crack down as hard with their regulation on crypto.
Just to add on, I think it all boils down to integrity. How you build your base or your subscribers, your followers at the beginning on, you know, like you mentioned, CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, and then after a while it just becomes a page shield after page shield. This is, I think at the end of the day, it's just what does the company want. If the company wants a bottom line, then obviously it will switch to a very heavy revenue model. If it just wants to continue to create great content and find great writers for the space, then the revenue model has to change, probably from the subscribers to keep it entirely by the users, and the users obviously will vote or still stay dedicated and loyal by, you know, subscribing to the channel. I mean, subscribing to the website or whatever. Right, instead of always getting it from the corporates. Now, eventually, I do see for the fact that everybody has a price. Let's just be very honest, and it all boils down to what's that price? You know, before I kind of sell off my website or my integrity. I think I already see it in a lot of websites already, and it will continue to be like that. I think it's always nice to be able to be free and having that whole space just evolve around you and just be passionate. But at the end of the day, everybody has to pay bills. Everybody has liabilities, and so it just boils down to, like I said, I mean, how do I generate revenue? It's just the way it is.
Well, guys, we could keep this conversation going for a lot longer than this. I look forward to talking with you after this session, but we can't occupy more stage time, or we're going to be pushed off the side. So that's, thanks very much for coming to talk with us today. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ryan, Nai, and also Stephen, for the insight about cryptocurrency media. Now I have to call you the next speakers. We have another discussion about blockchain economy and the new technology of trade. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Director of Blockchain Innovation Hub, RIMT University, Professor Jason Potts.
Good Afternoon, everybody. Amazing to see so many of you here. Thank you for joining us after lunch. That's always a challenge, I understand that. We are on stage talking about not playing around. Video games is all about playing around, but we're going to talk about not playing around and how blockchain could redefine the gaming industry. So joining me here is Ross Krasner and Kyle Liu. I'm going to let them just do a little 30-second introduction of who they are, what they do, and more importantly, why this is a particular topic for them, you know, why blockchain in particular. So, Ross, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my name is Ross Krasner. I'm CEO and co-founder of RyuCoin. We're building a blockchain-based platform that lets users play real money tournaments in their favorite video games. So if I'm a user, I can pay a 5 RyuCoin entry fee and play against another user who pays a 5 RyuCoin entry fee, and the winner might get 9 RyuCoin. So we're making games more exciting for users and more profitable for developers. And I'm really excited to be talking about this topic because I believe that if cryptocurrency is if there's gonna be a mass adoption of a single cryptocurrency, it's gonna be because it's gaming. So I'm really excited to talk through.
Awesome. Thank you. And Kyle.
Hi, my name is Kyle Liu. I'm the founder and CEO of Dev.com. So we are building the entire ecosystem to facilitate the mass adoption for blockchain applications. So like our name, Dev, decentralized application. So we just launched our first product like 3 months ago. It's like Dev Markets. So we are listing over 1,000 decentralized applications on EOS, on Ethereum, on Neo, on different blockchains. So we also provide data services to analyze how is the usage of that specific dApps, how's the performance of contracts, and like daily active users, some kind of data. And the reason why we're here because like right now most of the decentralized applications are games or game related. So so as like a person who is like overseeing the whole decentralized applications, so we were able to share more insights of what's going on with blockchains and games.
Awesome, thank you. And you might all be wondering what this incredibly old man is doing on stage from VentureBeat. Well, I actually started out as an independent video game developer when I was approximately this high. And I've been involved in the video game industry for a long time. And VentureBeat actually has a sister publication called GamesBeat, which is one of the most popular video game publications in the world as well. So I feel like I've earned my spot on stage to ask you questions about games. You know, let's start with why blockchain, because the thing that has struck me about blockchain and the video game industry in general is we've already been tokenizing the video game industry for years. You know, games have got their own in-game currencies. Games have got their own in-app purchases. We already have effectively a token to fiat conversion going on because you buy coins inside, you know, something like, I don't know, Best Fiends, and you pay for that with actual money. There's a transaction between fiat and tokens going on there. Why is blockchain coming into this? What does it offer that we don't already get from in-app purchases and in-app tokens?
We see there are like a few benefits. So first of all is like the ownership of the digital assets. So games have a lot of digital assets, but like what if a game that you spend a lot of money on playing and it shuts down? And all that what you pay for that has gone. And when you're building it based on a blockchain, say for example Ethereum, like all these assets, I think everyone knows about CryptoKitties and like other like games like Ethereum Mon, so their characters or their game assets was based on the blockchain. So the users have the full ownership of it, even though like the game like is no longer operating, but you still own the digital asset. You can trade it. There's liquidity on it, and it has the it's more collaborated. So the other games can build based on another like the characters from another game. So for example, right now a lot of people have CryptoKitty, and then there are some game developers they're building from CryptoKitty. So you can use your CryptoKitty to have a fight. You can use your kitty to have a race. So there are a lot of these kind of like collaborated and usage of these game assets and full transparency and and ownership.
Let me just guess the names of those products. Is it Kitty Race and Kitty Fight? I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
So you know, that's one usage, that's one reason. But you know, why particularly for what you're doing with RyuCoin and your platform?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the trends we're seeing is the professionalization of video game players, and part of that is earning money for your streams. So if you're a video game player right now, you could have a Twitch stream and people would go on and watch you play. I think cryptocurrencies and blockchain in general have a lot of interesting answers to the question of how you're going to monetize your Twitch stream. I think Ryucoin is one of those answers in a related way, in that you can earn money for playing video games. But I think also collectibles with real-world assets is another really good use case. And why blockchain? One of the good reasons is that if you have let's say you win a quarterback in Madden, you unlocked him, you earned him through the game. You could potentially in the future, if large video game developers adopt blockchain, you could trade that for, let's say, a gun in Call of Duty, even if they aren't necessarily the same developer, because blockchain, because of the blockchain or non-fungible tokens, you can prove unique ownership of an in-game item, and maybe two developers who aren't necessarily coordinating with each other, you can trade your items within one game for an item in another game.
And what sort of part does blockchain provide us in terms of transparency, for example, for the rules of a game or the way that different organizations are calculating things? I mean, famously in the insurance industry, we've seen blockchain disrupt that already, because let's say, you Ross, go for some car insurance and you go for car insurance, even if your profiles are identical to each other, it appears that sometimes the insurance companies will come up with $500 for you and $1,000 for you for no apparent reason, and that's because everything that's going on behind the scenes is owned by them, and they never show anybody what the algorithms look like. Is blockchain playing a part in making sure that when we are playing games, the rules of the game are completely transparent and fair for everybody?
Yeah, definitely. So right now when we talk about decentralized gaming, basically all of them, their logic, the gaming logic was written on the blockchain, powered by the smart contract. So basically and then it's open source. So users will be able to not say, for example, today I'm playing a betting game. So I basically know my chances of winning, and the developers are not able to cheat on that. That's the transparency that was brought by blockchain to the game.
Yeah, not only are the rules transparent, but the entire transaction history on it's a distributed ledger technology after all, so the entire transaction history you'll be able to read. In addition, we're introducing a dispute mechanism, so not only will you be able to see the rules of the game and the past transactions, but what if something happens and I disagree with the outcome? Well, I can see exactly how that's going to be resolved, whereas with some companies that are centralized solutions, that system can be opaque.
Yeah, that's very good. Look, we do have some issues with blockchain, though. We should talk about the issues a little bit. So first issue is, obviously nothing in blockchain is mainstream right now. And particularly in games, we have a problem. In CryptoKitties, we keep on mentioning it because it is the most obvious of all of the games. But I think the last time I looked at the figures for CryptoKitties, despite all of its popularity, it's currently at less than 13,000 monthly active users. And they're processing about 42,000 transactions a day. And in anyone's language, that's not even remotely close to mainstream. It's nowhere near even the top 100 mobile games available on either Google Play or the App Store. So what are we going to do to make these more mainstream? Is it actually just too difficult for people to use cryptocurrencies right now and for people to get in? I mean, Russ, tell us about your experience of even just getting into CryptoKitties since it's so popular.
Yeah, sure. I can say I tried to buy a CryptoKitty. It was about a week ago at this point, and I was unable to do it. About 20 minutes into it, I gave up. And it's because I have a Coinbase account in the United States, and it didn't let me access it outside of the United States. So to answer the question, yes, it's much too difficult for users to buy and sell cryptocurrencies and use those in-game right now. It's totally infeasible. And that's probably the largest hurdle from a user experience standpoint that companies need to figure out in order to actually achieve mass adoption, which I think cryptocurrencies and games can. I think one of the biggest issues, at least from a regulatory standpoint, that we came across was that we can't actually buy and sell directly to users for US dollars to Ryucoin because we need certain licenses, and those licenses can be upwards of hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, getting 50 money transmitter, money services, business licenses. So it's something that needs to be figured out. I think it's part regulation, part technical, but I do think that's going to get smoother over time, and that's when we're going to start seeing mass adoption.
What's the obvious answer to that? I mean, do you see a future for you in terms of partnering with some of the bigger exchanges that have already got those licenses, or are you trying to do this completely by yourselves and own that part of it?
Yeah, certainly to start, we're going to have to partner with exchanges or something like Coinbase that has those licenses, because it's just unfeasible for a startup to be able to spend millions of dollars just to get licenses to test the product.
And you've obviously got a huge amount of distributed apps on your platform, and you say the majority of them are games. I mean, the majority of those have got, what, just 1,000 monthly active users a month? What are we going to do to fix this and get it more mainstream and get it into the public eye?
Yeah, when we look at, I'll say the CryptoKitty, for example, like they have daily active users of average less than 300s right now. Yeah, so that's the thing. And when there are a few problems that we identify so far for using decentralized service. So, and first we look at Ethereum, like because it's the most mainstream, and we look and there were over 40 million Ethereum wallet address has been created, and then when we check on all the like 900 dApps on Ethereum that was listed on our platforms, and we look into the contracts, there are less than 700,000 in unique address has been interact with their contracts. So it's around less than 1%. So that's and then there are a few reasons. One is when you play a game or when you use a decentralized service, it's not free. You have to pay gas, you have to pay for Ethereum. If you are using a Neo dApps, you have to get the Neo gas. So that's one part of it. And then you have to buy the cryptocurrency. And for example, on Ethereum, it's slow. Like I can share experience with you guys when I first get into the industry, I start playing a lot of decentralized games, and I play one rock, paper, scissors. So I send it the transaction I request, I place it, and then I went out for lunch, and then come back, it just finished. The result just came out. So like sometimes when the network is jammed, you have to wait probably for like an hour for that. So like, how could you imagine when you are like playing like a game, like a what is it, like a PUBG or something, like you perceive something and then you wait. Yeah, so these are the problems that like we solve right now, and then but it's getting better. A lot of infrastructure has been built, like a lot of easy to use wallets, and there are a lot of like faster, like more scalable blockchains, or there are sidechain solutions that were like built for Ethereum to make it like faster for the game experience.
I mean, because after all, you and I could play rock, paper, scissors right now, and I guarantee a sub-second transaction time, right? Yeah. We should maybe do that.
Yes.
So, you know, actually, we can see a lot of you in the audience despite the incredibly bright lights. I'd love to see just a show of hands, make it really obvious for us, because it is dark out there. Like, how many of you have actually played a blockchain-based game at this point? Okay, literally 7 people out of the entire audience. And that's what we're talking about. I mean, most people haven't actually done this. And for you to take 20 minutes to even fail to be able to buy a CryptoKitty, and you're on the bleeding edge of blockchain technology, that tells us everything we need to know. But the other thing that we have a problem with is not just the transaction times, but the number of transactions. I mean, CryptoKitties, again, it completely blew up the Ethereum network on one particular dark day for them. What are some of the technologies that we can look to, maybe the Tangles of this world, EOS, et cetera, that are going to solve this problem and increase transaction volumes, going to reduce transaction times? Do they exist now, or do we still have to create those?
There are different different consensus mechanism that apply. Like although there are a lot of criticism on like EOS, but when we look at the numbers, they have achieved like some like betting games. They have achieved over 1 million daily transactions per day, like in those games. So, and because it's free, like there's no gas fee involved, and it's by proof of stake, so it make it really fast. And so I think that kind of like solving the problem right now. Like there are a lot of ways to make a blockchain very fast. Like there are different consensus. There are different methods like sharding. There are like plasmas, and so a lot of these are solving the problem right now. It just, I think we all still need a lot of developers to come into this space to build a game. Right now it's still so early. Like we didn't even see the what is it, the Angry Bird on blockchain that came out. Yeah.
And you know, admittedly, you're really early in the process at the moment, so you're just building out your solution. Full disclosure. But you know, you must be looking at this problem because you're probably looking at Ethereum and thinking, well, even though it's getting better and we are finding new ways to increase reduce transaction time, increase transaction volume, it must be a worry for you. What have you been looking at generally to try and solve these issues?
Yeah, so one of the reasons we chose Neo is because they have a new block every 15 and 20 seconds. So we're able to complete transactions within the span of a game that users are playing. So we're happy on that front. Obviously, we'd like it to bring that time down. In terms of scalability, we're not trying to build a protocol, so it seems like every day there's new news about faster block time, more transactions per second. So we think that the technology will improve to the point where we're able to scale to the point where we're like a normal video game company, where it's not necessarily at that right now. But we're kind of letting the protocols do that work.
One of the other things we're going to have to do to get this to be mainstream is actually make games that are compelling and fun and interesting and that people want to play. You know, you must have seen some good examples by now. Let's not talk about CryptoKitties for the rest of this entire session because I think we all know how that works. But and if you don't know how it works, you literally buy kitties. And if you buy 2 of them, you can breed another one and then you can sell it. It's not fun, but it's great. But you know, what have you seen out there that's actually compelling, that's a great example of a really, really good game that might get people to bite and might get people to get interested in blockchain games?
Personally, I haven't seen any good crypto games, but I have seen good video games. So that's why we're developing an API that speaks to our smart contract that we can put in video games that are built by people who are good at building video games. And it's also... good video games can take thousands of man-years to develop. So the same companies that are building the blockchain solutions might not be the same companies that are building the video games. And so we're trying to build that bridge between the blockchain space and the video game space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of, you know, attaching to somebody else's compelling content. But blockchain games also need to exist by themselves and succeed by themselves. You know, Carl, what have you seen that maybe has a chance of at least, you know, being the Pokemon Go of the blockchain world?
Yeah, so far the most like the games that like everyone was looking at right now in the crypto space is a game called Gods Unchained. Unchained. So it's built by an Australian team, and so it combines with like the card trading strategy games that were built on blockchain. So, but they haven't launched yet. So they did the pre-sale of a lot of like very like rare cards and all these assets, and then we have to wait for a little bit longer until the end of the year. But that is something that was transforming the gaming industry as well, because in the old time, like if we want to build like something really good, like probably take like a lot of money and at least like 6 to 8 months or 9 months or and then right now they got like do a pre-sale like to attract a lot of potential users and then take the funds and then build it. It's another way to start a project. Yeah. I think that's something new.
those very words, they haven't launched yet. That's the blockchain mantra right now. You know, depending on which analyst you listen to, something from 60% to 95% of projects are vaporware at this point, because it's kind of like Kickstarter. Until you get the money, you can't start building it. Is that a big problem for actually ever getting blockchain games into the mainstream? If we end up with so many projects that haven't launched yet, are people just going to mistrust the technology so much that they never get into it? Or do you think we're going to get over that peak at some point and we'll finally get to enough real projects that people will latch on?
I can go first. I think it's going to take a different kind of mindset for companies who are doing ICOs. I think they need to release the product before they do the token sale. And that's a pretty fundamental shift, that the ICO doesn't fund development of the platform. Rather, the platform is available and those tokens have immediate utility the second someone in the token sale buys it, which is what we're doing. I think it's going to take that seismic fundamental shift in ICO projects for that to happen.
Are you suggesting that we actually have utility tokens that are used for the utility they were meant for?
I am, yeah.
That's a radical concept in blockchain, ladies and gentlemen. Carl, you want to weigh in on that?
No, I think it's like, how does it? I would say it's like a pre-sale of your service, and it's backed by the blockchain. I mean, even though there are a lot of risks on like any kind of investment, there are risks, and but there's still like a lot of good teams, and then they would like to get they're strong in technical, and then they're strong with their concept, and they just apply what is happening on the blockchain industry to their operation strategy. There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah.
So when we're thinking about developing games, there might be people sitting out there in the audience right now are thinking, I haven't thought about creating a game on the blockchain. I've thought about everything else, but I haven't thought about that. What are some of the first steps that people would take to actually leverage blockchain for game development? I know you're going to answer this from an API standpoint, but even then, you've got special considerations that you need to think about in terms of how to integrate blockchain effectively into an existing game. So, what are some of the things that people should be thinking about first? What are the building blocks for making a game on the blockchain?
I mean, the first thing I would tell someone is you have to make a game that's fun. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the 500 daily active users. Now, that may make you the most popular crypto game out there right now, but I think that if you really want a game to succeed and actually generate revenue from it, make it fun, make it a good game, and then you can have a monetization strategy in mind, but a rock, paper, scissors game that takes 40 minutes isn't going to do anything for anybody. So, I mean, honestly, if I were to tell a game developer, I would say find a third-party solution, whether that's RyuCoin or something else that offers an API that works with the flow of the game that you just created.
I mean, with the best will in the world, if you're a blockchain developer, you have a very different skill set already to what is needed for creating a compelling and fun video game. I don't want to stereotype people, but typically blockchain developers are not the right people to be writing scripts, drawing characters, creating AI non-player characters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are we really talking about, to make a successful game, you have to put all of the traditional building blocks in place for video game development? Or do you think that there are opportunities for blockchain developers to either learn those skills somewhere or develop something that only requires technical knowledge?
I mean, you could learn those skills, but I mean, why not just, it also depends on what you mean by game. I think what blockchain developers have created, and people might not find them games, is trading, is sort of similar to gambling, which is, I think, going to be heavily disrupted by blockchain. I mean, there are sites where you can trade cryptocurrencies with 100x leverage. I mean, to me, that's gambling, and that's fun for some people. And imagine you could do that with play money, and you could pay to do that with play money. That's a game that a blockchain developer could create, but like one with characters and rules, I would leave that to a video game developer.
And you're more on the traditional blockchain side, with everybody developing their dApps and listing them on your platform. How do you feel about blockchain developers getting into games? What should they be doing first?
I think we can't rely on blockchain developers to build games. Like blockchain, I think nowadays the builder of these dApps does not necessarily know how to build blockchains because they learn it's like full stack developers. They know how to write, if they're building on Ethereum, they know how to write on Solidity, on smart contract. So, and then the rest of them would be basically the same as like normal software developments. But I think most important is the traditional gaming developers, like you said, with the team, like with the game designer, with the graphic designers to come into the blockchain to make a games that has nice concept, like great UI, great design, great use experience, and gaming mechanism to make it happen. Yeah.
So let's say that we've got the perfect game. There's lots of people using it. Hopefully more than 500 daily active users, Ross. In terms of monetization strategies, that's another thing that especially mobile games are particularly good at. They're particularly good at user acquisition strategies. They're particularly good at monetization. And within your API, you're basically building something that people can attach to any game, and I can buy in and I can win. But monetization within games is often a lot more complex than that. We've got timeout strategies. We have all sorts of rewards. We've got purchasing of in-app tokens effectively in order to be able to do different things within the game. Are we going to see just a continuation of that, or do you think there are other monetization strategies that make more sense?
Sure. I mean, I think you kind of hit it on there's lots of innovative ways to monetize games that I think we are just starting to see. I think blockchain is going to be a big part of that. I think the era where you charge for a game just to buy it and play it is over or ending, and good. It's ineffective, and it's a one-time purchase that limits your user base. So I think there's going to be a lot of innovation on that front. I think blockchain's great. I think collectibles, in-game tournaments, tipping professionals. There's lots of different innovations in that front.
Yeah, the one problem that we have to address is that when we talk about daily active users in traditional games, we mean that people who actually log in and play play the game, right? But in the blockchain space, daily active user means people who pay in the game. So it's a different concept. Like when we look at traditional game, it might be 80% of the users are free, they don't pay for anything, but the remaining 20% are actually paying for the service and buying all the characters and all the weapons, right? And so right now the problem of games on blockchain there are no free users. Everyone has to pay. Every character, you have to buy it, unless the game developer say, I want to do airdrop to everyone. But none of them are doing that.
That does change the dynamics of games on the blockchain completely, because actually the stat is that over 80% of players of free-to-play games are responsible for less than 1% of the revenue in free-to-play games. Yeah. So free-to-play game developers have a massive issue in understanding how they're going to monetize their content, because the vast majority of people only ever play for free. Whereas what you're saying is that if you use blockchain technology, that does redefine the gaming industry, because everyone that's playing is paying effectively. That makes analytics really important. And the other thing I think blockchain opens up is, on the mobile analytics side alone, we have over 700 marketing technology products that people use to measure what's happening in their mobile apps and in their games, which is, in anyone's terms, a massively fragmented market. But on the blockchain, we're redefining that analytics also because of the transparent distributed ledger, right? How do you think that's going to affect the behind the scenes? What are marketers going to get from using blockchain for their games versus the developers?
I think I think they still need to combine both of the analytical tools to monetize the game, because you might have a lot of transactions a lot of traffic to your game. They might take a look and then they left, and then there are only a few percentage of people who actually convert and to go and actually join the game, and then we go back to the numbers that we have just now, like less than 1%. Like everyone who is playing blockchain games right now must be crypto token holders. So, and then the question would be like, how do we educate people that are true gamers who does not have the knowledge of how to buy tokens, how to open up wallets and all this to get into the game. Yeah, that's what I think.
Sure, I think that's interesting. I think game developers care about 3 analytics. That's revenue, retention, and reach. And I think if an introduction of a blockchain system to that game can improve those KPIs, then they're going to use it. If not, I don't think they care that it's blockchain. They're not going to use it. So I think that the traditional analytics are going to stay, and that it's just going to depend on the outcomes of the technology.
Is blockchain inherently more measurable than traditional mobile games, or do you think it doesn't make a difference?
I think at the end of the day, with what they're trying to measure, I don't think it makes a difference because they just care about revenue, retention, reach, and I think those are all measurable outside of blockchain.
The one other thing that I wanted to bring up is, we quite often hear stories of, when you download a game, you give certain permissions to the game, and a lot of times people don't make the permissions very clear. And then, of course, they've got your email address, they've got your details from maybe a Facebook login, Google login, and you get a never-ending stream of messages, not just from them, but they may well sell your data to third parties. Does blockchain redefine gaming in the respect that it's going to fix that problem, or do you just see that, frankly, it's going to be more of the same?
I can tell you for us, we're not taking any users' names, we're not necessarily taking their emails, we certainly don't store their passwords. So there's a pseudo-anonymity to the games that I think that people really like. So yeah, I think that's a huge improvement.
I think I also want to go back to the last questions about the accounts, right? So in the traditional gaming, like you basically monetize all the accounts information of all the players. But in blockchain, you only see like there are a lot of wallets there. You might able to see like they might not be their main wallets, because like you'll be able to see how many ether do they have on their account, but does not mean that if they're 20 ether on their account, does not mean that they only have 20 ethers, right? So and then all the data are like the structure of all these data are different from the traditional gaming, the data that would be collected in those games. So it makes it harder for data analytics. I think that's one of that. And second is also like because it's all like wallet address, and like the game developer are not able to collect a lot of information from them, but it also make it harder for the developers to actually follow up and interact with the users, because they don't provide any user information. Yeah.
So what we want to do just for the last couple of minutes is open it up to the audience. We've got some microphones out there, so if you've got a question for Ross or Kyle or both, please raise your hand, but also wait for the microphone to arrive. Do we have a brave soul who wants to open their mouth? I'm looking very hard. It's very hard to see because you're so dark out there. Yes, we've got a question right at the front here. Can we get a microphone to the front? Thank you.
Hey, thank you. So this is a very new industry. There's a lot going on here. Can you speak a bit to the legality of your platforms? Have you run into any legal pressure, or is this at all concern for having regulatory backlash or anything of that nature?
I couldn't quite hear.
So the question is, can we speak a little bit to the legality and regulatory platforms that are in place here, and if there are any? Is this something that is regulated or should be regulated, or are we talking about the Wild West again?
Yeah, exactly.
Not the Wild West, so definitely regulated. There's two fronts on our business. We have gaming regulations and security regulations. We're at the end of the day, we're minting a utility token. So in order for that to be the case, at least in the United States, that token needs to have immediate utility once a purchaser buys it. So we're going to have to release our full platform that's ready to go before our token sale. So as soon as someone buys that token, they can use it. On the gambling front, we're not a gambling token. Our token is used to enter real money tournaments that have entry fees and prizes paid out that aren't necessarily tied to the number of entrants in the game. So these are all pretty well defined, and when it comes to the security front especially, there are still some ambiguities and gray areas, but for the most part, it's pretty clear that what we need to do. Our lawyer is ex-FINRA, and I mean, there are still certain questions with the money services business, money transmitter licenses that are unclear to say the least, but for the most part, we have pretty solid direction from regulators on what to do.
And for dApps, for decentralized applications, they aren't at regulation right now at the markets. Is most of them I would say it's still a gray area, because blockchain, everyone can build stuff on blockchain. It's open source. You don't know who's the builder of the game, who is the builder of that application. So, and they might be some potential issues there. There are some developers that they are not really well at coding the smart contract, and then so it would got hacked. The account, all the money in the account would got hacked, and then there are also some Ponzi scheme that that exists on the blockchain right now. So what we do is right now we're trying to figure out how do we provide information to the users. But what we're doing is first we filter out some of the sensitive information, and secondly is we track all those data and try to identify those that have fake traffics and all those stuff. Because for example, there are some idle games, they open up a lot of fake accounts to make the transactions really big. So people will say, oh, a lot of people are playing this game, so they went in and participate. So we did build algorithm to actually filter out all these fake accounts, or we call it zombie accounts. So to make sure that our ranking system is more real and protecting the users.
And after all, zombie accounts should only exist in zombie games, so I think that's a good move. I would like to thank Ross and Carl for their time and for all of their expertise today. Please give them a warm round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kyle Liu, Ross Krasner, and Stuart Rogers. Right now, I would love to present you the Director of Blockchain Innovation Hub, RIMT University, Professor Jason Potts.
Thank you very much, everyone. So I'm Jason Potts. I'm director of the Blockchain Innovation Hub, which is the world's first social science research institute on blockchain, and still the world's largest. We're based in Melbourne at RMIT University, and we were set up over a year ago as, I'm sort of from the research sector, from the universities, and this is another part of the key ecosystem that is part of your world. And what I want to present in the next 20 minutes is just a view of what the blockchain space looks like to economists. And this is sort of necessarily going to be a little bit abstract and long-term view, but I wanted to use this as a way to emphasize where I think the sector is going and what the sort of key aspects of it are. So first point to realize is that it's a very new sector. We're in an experimental early stage, and we're kind of not at the same time. We're 60 years deep already. In terms of the internet upon which this technology is built, we're effectively 10 years, 5 years into this sort of most recent phase of the development of the internet, which goes back essentially to the early 1960s, even 50s in that space. And what we see is multiple phases that are going through it, each one characterized by fundamental uncertainty, discovery of applications and development, and then shift. What's interesting is that the internet basically moved through military, science, and then the commercial internet in the 1990s. That's the same thing of cryptography as well. The two sort of things that come together in this technology, internet and cryptography, both are sort of 60-year deep technologies. We're building on the later stages of this. So that sort of historical context that's what just happened, was that we're 60 years deep in a technological development where 10 years ago, these 5 technologies, each one of those developed in the 1970s. The game theory part in the 1960s. Again, not new technologies. What's new is the recent combination of these put together. That's what gives us blockchain, is these 5 technologies combined. To do what? This is the standard definition of what this space is. I won't sort of walk you through that. I'm assuming everyone in this room is well familiar with what this all refers to. I like this definition better. So this is one I saw at I think it was at Consensus, actually, last year. Miko Matsumura, one of the VCs at Pantera Capital, defined it as the Millennium Falcon of databases. It's the database you use when you just need something to work under hostile attack. And that sort of concept, I think, is where we need to start, right? This is what this technology is a bunch of a bunch of technologies combined together to really just do one thing. It's a new technology of ledgers, right? So in our sort of 60-year cycle, in our 10-year cycle, the interesting thing about new technologies of ledgers is that this is the sort of thing that doesn't happen very often. Fundamental shifts in basic ledger technology. And what that does is it defines it in the context of an accounting technology, an institutional technology, a technology that underpins how economies work. Right? That's what just changed. It's a crypto, it involves cryptography, it involves maths, it involves the internet, it involves peer-to-peer networking, but fundamentally it is about a shift in the technology of the building blocks upon which we build economies. Right? That's the significance of this. That's why we're, as a bunch of economists working in a university, we do nothing but study new technologies. This one caused us just to drop everything, form an entire research unit, and just what we'll probably end up devoting the rest of our lives to studying this. Because what just changed is something that happens more or less once every sort of 600 years, in the sense that ledger technologies are technologies for recording social facts. Social facts are things where we as a group need to agree about a subjective answer to a question, such as, who is that person? Ledger entry is an answer, identity. Who owns that cow? Ledger entry answer is property rights. Who is the counterparty on this contract? Identity plus ledger entry as a registry. Who owns this asset? Registries, identity, ledgers are the building blocks of economies, and always have been. We don't even sort of think of it that way because it's just so fundamentally deep. It's built into the way in which money works, the way in which assets work, the way in which political democracies work. Citizenship is a ledger. It's a record of entry of who someone is and what rights they have amongst a social group. It's a social fact that grants certain political rights, voting, access to sort of to various privileges and or aspects of society. Citizenship is a ledger, economy is a ledger, social security is a ledger, firms are ledgers, everything is a ledger. Now what that means is that when ledger technology changes, so does everything in a really fundamental way. And this, I think, is the actual appropriate historical context in terms of where we are. We're, 4 years deep since Ethereum, we're 10 years deep since the Bitcoin white paper, we're 60 years deep since the internet, we're 6,000 years deep since the invention of the first ledger. The first ledger gave us simultaneously money, writing, numbers, history, economies. That was somewhere back in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East, or somewhere in, it's basically everything. It's the beginning of history, it's the beginning of ledgers as recording social facts to organize societies. Now, what just happened 10 years ago was that we've got a new technology of ledgers. Now, the last time that happened will date more or less from the early 20th century, mid-20th century, when we digitized ledgers. That gave us global capitalism. The time before that was around the 14th century, when we invented the first verifiable ledger. That was accounting, the double entry bookkeeping. What did that give us? Capitalism. That gave us that gave us the idea of a company which could accumulate capital, which built the modern world. Before that, fundamental shifts in writing, numbers drove this. So this technology historically shifts about once every 600 years. It just shifted 10 years ago. So we are very much in the early stages of this. So this is this perspective that we sort of take on why, from an economic perspective, this is something big just happened. All right. The economics of this is, from an economic perspective, what blockchains do is that they economize on trust. They take a thing that we use as an input into everything, contracting, organizations, trade, everything. In the same way that we use energy as an input into all production, we use trust as an input into all governance. Just took a technology for manufacturing trust and fundamentally lowered the cost of doing that thing. Whenever we fundamentally lower the cost of doing a thing that we use for doing everything, we can expect to do a lot more of that thing. Supply curves slope upwards, demand curves slope downwards. This is basic economics. And what that means then is that we're now in a world where we can use promise. We can basically make promises, write them to blockchains, verify, audit that, and use that as a basis for coordinating economic activity. We've never had that prospect in anything like the same scale before. So this is what just shifted. We're going to be moving economies to a world of promise, far more so than competition. What that means is that markets and firms and governments are going to look different. We'll still need all of those things, but the order in which and the scale of which they will operate will start to shift. That's the basic economics of blockchains, not just technology diffusion, but fundamental shift in how economies are organized. So, again, same point, put slightly differently. What just happened was we got a technology with which we can do money, rules, contracts, services, exchanges, monitoring, governance. At any other point in human history, when we've had a technology that's had all of those capabilities, there was a name for that technology. Government would provide all of those things. We now have a technology where we can spin up governments, i.e. the fundamental properties of governments, more or less in an afternoon. Bad versions of that, and then we'll refine that as we go. But building governments or building countries used to take centuries, would involve civil wars, would involve armies, would be incredibly expensive things to do that we didn't do very often. But the entire history of human civilization, as of now, we've kind of got about 200 of them. We can build 200 of these in an afternoon now. So that's the kind of shift that's just happened. That's the context in which I think we'd sort of view this whole blockchain as Web 3, is that, it is Web 3. It's the third generation of the internet. First generation was data, when we basically moved all things to digital data, enabling communication and dramatically lowering the cost of sending data. That gave us email, more or less. Second generation of internet is the one we've been living through for the past 20 years, which is more or less the social internet. That gave us groups on the internet. What it didn't do was give us any of the ingredients of economies: money, contracts, property rights, governance, and so on. That just happened. Third generation of the internet is that. This is a new type of economy that's just been built. All right, so what does this look like? We've invented a new field of economics to describe this. We're calling it institutional crypto economics. It's not the best name in the world, but it's an accurate description of what it is. And the key insight for us is that what just changed was not a new technology in the economy like the steam engine or like computers, the same economy but with added technology. What just changed was a new form of governance that has never existed before. For the previous 6,000 years of human history, every bit of economic activity that took place in either firms, markets, or governments, or some combination of those. Some economies are heavily stacked towards government, some heavily stacked towards firms, but everything in those three governance institutions. We've now got a fourth. And what that means is that some of the economic activity that took place in these other three, will move to blockchains. A blockchain-based economy will look different in the sense that it's now got a fundamental new governance mechanism in it. That's where the uncertainty is coming from, is that it's not quite clear what this is going to look like on the other side, where this is going to shake out, which sectors are going to be affected. But this is not like the other technologies. The invention of plastics or the invention of steam engines or the invention of microchips did not have this effect. They were better, faster, cheaper technologies. This one is a governance technology or an institutional technology. We meet these things, as I said, about once every 600 years. The last time we met this one, it gave us the joint stock company, which gave us global modern economies. We can expect this one will also produce a similar sort of seismic shift. It's just not clear what this is going to look like yet. All right, but I want to try and walk you through what I think that is. If you want to sort of follow us, I mean, we're academics, we write in research journals, but we try and publish our stuff sort of describing this on Medium and try and push it out as quickly as possible. So you can follow us on almost everything we do. We put straight to Medium on this, or you can see the original journal articles describing this. But this is sort of fundamental new research on how economies work. All right, so social facts, ledgers, that's what just shifted. What changes? So everyone's familiar with what this does to money. We've talked about that already in a number of the panels. Identity is the other sort of big and obvious thing that, again, most people are reasonably familiar with. Registries is the process of tokenization in assets. I want to talk about a few other ones that shift. And to our mind, the big ones are supply chains and data markets. So I'll talk through how I think these ones shift. So supply chains on blockchains. Supply chains are basically economic technology of production and distribution that involves a good or service moving between corporate boundaries, across countries, within countries. But a supply chain is basically an economic organizational problem. Two things move: the good or service and the information about the good or service. Over the long 20th century, the cost of moving the good or service dramatically fell, mostly due to things like shipping containers and satellites and just technology, logistics technology. But the one thing that didn't shift, in fact has gotten worse, is the cost of handling all the information. That's where the opportunity lies, in essentially a revolution in terms of the information handling and processes behind that. So next aspect of this is, so we can think of supply chains in terms of information provenance for an agricultural good moving along. But a supply chain refers to anything where you've got complex contracting between parties. Now, agriculture, manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, all classic examples of supply chains you're familiar with. But so too are things like construction firms, where you've got layers of subcontracting. The prime subcontracts the next firm, subcontracts the next one. That's also a supply chain in terms of the information problem of how you verify and audit information about whether the subcontractors are compliant, whether they have licenses to be there, and so on. It's information handling problems. Same thing with the entire digital creative industries economy. Whenever we've got digital production, in this case, it's the producer needs to be able to track through multiple layers of copying and relicensing who the consumer actually is. Same thing with platforms, whether these are charities or any sort of organization that is a platform. Essentially, the economy is made of creating and distributing things, resources, and also verifying, auditing, accounting the information associated with those things. Long 20th century gave us huge technological breakthroughs in the things side of the economy. We're still trying to catch up with moving all of the stuff. So we think of this as basically globalization 2.0. Right? Blockchain brings us globalization 2.0. It's building on the digital revolution in the sense that it's largely focused around handling information, but this is not just communicating information. It's not just the thing that the internet does. It's verifying, auditing, being able to trust bits of information in order to securely transfer property rights across a global supply chain for any sort of good or service. That's what this technology is as new economic infrastructure for the global economy. Now, what's the opportunity space? We did some work, we just published last week actually on this, estimating the cost of trust in the global economy. This is how much resources do we actually put into auditing, verifying, checking, validating, all of the information involved in complex contracting. I won't tell you how we did that, you can find out about that in the paper. But the, even to us, surprising number we came up with was 35%. 35% of global GDP is spent just on trust. That's no consumer benefit from that. That's purely just making the information work on the way through. Not communicating it, verifying it. 35% of GDP right now is $29 trillion. Now, obviously, blockchain doesn't take all of that. That would be absurd. But that's the economic opportunity that this technology is cutting into, in terms of just what would happen when we can automate a process that we're currently spending a huge amount of resources on. The basis of these costs, as I sort of indicated, is sort of made up of transport and information costs. This is focusing on the information costs. It's this sort of stuff, right? This is the back office, boring, unsexy, technological opportunity that's worth trillions to clean this up. We clean this up, that's globalization 2.0. Globalization 1.0 basically took the human population from 3 trillion to 7 trillion. It basically lifted most of the world out of poverty. It was the single biggest thing that ever happened to the human species. Now we're on globalization 2.0, more or less repeating the same process, but this time on information, not on things. So we sort of see that this is the sort of space of the economic opportunity behind what blockchain potentially brings. What that does is it means we're not finished with globalization yet. We haven't yet got to P2P global trade. We still use hubs. We still go through intermediaries. We still use, there's still a huge sort of cost involved in global trade. Even though we've reduced trade barriers, we've really made that a much more efficient process. So that's the sort of space that we see. What does that lead to? We think this is the next institutional thing that we need, is basically blockchain trade zones. What a blockchain trade zone is a set of open protocols upon which information enters, and once it enters in the zone, it's verified, validated, or it's by anything else in that space. We spent the 20th century building a whole lot of trade zones. This was largely what the whole geopolitics of the 20th century was about. We can do it again, but this time in a far more complex and open way. This is an exercise we're driving. We've formed the Worldwide Blockchain Innovation Association to try and drive this process home. But what we see is that this is the next sort of geopolitical aspect of how we build this technology beyond actually building sort of immediate market uses. All right, so that's the sort of broad sense of where I've got. Running out of time right now, so what I'll do is just skip through to the final sort of conclusion. What this means is that blockchain is new economic infrastructure. It's platform infrastructure. what we'll use this for is building anything that we need platforms for. So cleaning up metadata, building autonomous, basically the entire economy of Internet of Things, 5G, IoT, is built on this economic infrastructure. How we get there is through a process of digital twinning. But this is the optimism that we see behind this space, is that this is new economic infrastructure, that we're in the very early stages of building this right now. But upon this, we build everything else. We build the entire next generation suite of technologies. So that's where we see we are now. We also don't pay any attention to crypto prices because that's just completely irrelevant to the story. What we are paying attention to is the joined up ecosystems that are being built. That's where we are now. Once that's done, we get a whole new world. All right, so this is us. We're, as I said, a bunch of economists, political scientists, legal scholars, and so on, based at RMIT University. We're a publicly funded university, and we're willing and keen to work with sort of anyone in this space who's willing to do that. So look us up online and get in contact if you have any sort of further insights or comments or wish to work with us as we try and develop this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jason Potts. And right now, our next session is about blockchain in the real world industries. It can revolutionize and change everything. So please welcome our speakers, three CEOs: Laszlo Giric, founder and CEO of Poseidon; Oscar Darmawan, CEO of Indodax; Lon Wong, oh he has lots of fans, Lon Wong, CEO of Proximax, and also our moderator for the session, Alvin Chua, President, Institute of Blockchain.
Wow, it's been a long 2 days, right? So I think, hang on everyone, the party is near, right? So before we start, I think we'll give introductions. Yeah, maybe start from Laszlo.
Hi, I'm Laszlo. I'm the founder and CEO of Poseidon, and what we do is we empower everybody to participate in climate action by supporting forest conservation.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lon Wong. I've been in the blockchain space for the last 6 years. I used to head the NEM blockchain as the global president. Today, I'm the CEO of Proximax.
Hello everyone, my name is Oscar Darmawan. I'm CEO of Indodax. We are the largest exchange in Indonesia with about more than 1.4 million user base in this market.
All right, thanks. Okay, for myself, I'm Alvin from Institute of Blockchain. So we are based in Singapore. We conducted courses for the past 1 year in both Singapore and Hong Kong. Yeah, so we do education, certification, and research in blockchain. Right. So now I think we will start the panel proper. And the first topic, the question that I want to ask is, what do you see that the industry in the APEC region, Asia Pacific region, that you will see a transformation that blockchain brings about, and what are the top industry that you will see that is applying blockchain in their daily operations? Is there any that you want to share about this industry? Maybe Laszlo, you want to start first?
I wish I could say a lot of clever things to that, but we haven't expanded in the Asia region yet, so I'm not totally sure what is happening in the Asia region in that respect. But generally, when we're looking at blockchain technology across the world, wherever it's important to share data, wherever traceability and transparency is important, so traditionally in the shipping sector or when you look at like medical records, areas like that benefit hugely from blockchain. What I definitely want to see, and that's not just in Asia, that's across the world, what I definitely want to see is that blockchain projects don't start as blockchain projects. I want projects to start as clever minds finding a real-world problem, applying a real-world solution, and then discovering that blockchain fits into their offering.
Yeah, in the APEC or around the world, I think a lot of emphasis has been put on the financial industry. And the saddest part about it is that for the last, at least the last 3 years to 4 years, you see that a lot of financial institutions and companies are only testing and testing the technology. It's not putting it to work. But every time, I've been to so many conferences, every time the thing is always about transaction, value transaction, and it's about financial industry, but nothing has been done. So one of the reasons why I actually move on beyond the financial industry is that I have basically given up hope on how the financial industry is shaping up towards the use of blockchain technology to become, you know, something that is the greatest thing since sliced bread. So this is where I think moving forward from here is that we need to be able to apply blockchain technology into industries where they are less or not regulated at all. And one of these things could, could be things like building develop dApps or applications on top of blockchain technology, similar to what you have seen this morning with Function X. And increasingly, you'll see much, much more of that as we start to roll out a lot more things in the coming years.
Well, from my point of view, I'm quite agree with Lon that actually banking sector and financial sector is the one that are very a lot involved in these sectors. And we can see in the recent years, and especially in this year, I know almost all bank in APEC region, I will say from my experience is the Indonesia region doing a lot of testing. They start to have a prototype for doing blockchain and all the stuff. But they not only stop in testing, many of them try to move it into the production scale. But of course, because these are regulated sectors, they need to try to comply with the central bank to implement all of these things. But I believe blockchain will really make impact in the banking sectors. And other than the banking, I can see that a lot of other industry like gaming industry, health industry will also involve because of the blockchain sectors. Especially as we all know, gaming is one of the early industry that really involved with the blockchain.
Thank you. Yeah, you want to add?
I'd like to add something to that. The blockchain industry, if we want to call it as one industry, which in itself is a bit of a joke, but the blockchain industry had the unfortunate birth with Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is great, and they have done really amazing things to bring us more understanding of what blockchain can do. But the problem we have is if you ask somebody on the street, hey, do you know blockchain? The majority of the people will say no. And those people who say they know blockchain, they will say, Bitcoin. It's like, no, blockchain is the technology used by Bitcoin, but it's not Bitcoin. But that is the problem. Most people think blockchain equals Bitcoin, and then a few less people think that blockchain equals cryptocurrencies. But really, blockchain is a new way of storing, transacting data. That's all it is. It's data processing. And when I spoke during New York Climate Week at the Sustainable Investment Forum, one of the panelists said something I really agree with. He said, blockchain will be successful as soon as we stop calling it blockchain.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, do you see any best practices in the industry right now where blockchain is being used as a use case? Is there any best practices that you want to see or you have been witnessing that is a industry practice that we should all follow? Maybe Oscar, you want to start first?
Well, sad to say, but currently blockchain is still very early days. A lot of hype in every industry, but there is no such thing that really a productional worldwide states of blockchain being used as now. But I believe the supply chain we really use a blockchain, and we can see from these few days how IBM also involved in the supply chain. They create a product to really make the industry can use blockchain to track supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I said earlier that the financial industry, everybody's testing. But as, you know, as we speak today, as I speak today, I foresee that there will be quite a number of blockchain-driven sort of solutions or businesses out there that is of a lesser entity in terms of full financial licensed financial institution like a bank. It could very well be a e-payment, e-settlement system that is happening as I speak today. So I think that is something that's going to mushroom as Uberization of the entire financial industry. Then I beg to differ how, you know, again, things like how IBM is announcing supply chain. Supply chain is a very complicated process. It involves the entire industries, not just one industry, because if you start looking at the entire supply chain, it includes the manufacturer, the suppliers to the manufacturer, then there is the transport system, the freight forwarding, and then the customs. You know how hard it is to change that? I think it's almost impossible in the next 5 years. So again, that is going to be something that I see it as a prototype, as a test, as something that you experiment with, but it's never going to kick off immediately in the next 5 years. What I see that is going to happen in the next 5 years, in the least, is where, as I said earlier, is unregulated, and where what Oscar said, you know, games, for example, is isolated as a solution, as an application, and that's where you see things like maybe Facebooks of the world that's going to come into being in a blockchain-driven or powered solution. Then you could see things like this sort of isolated events happening, more so than a business that's going to involve multiple parties, just like the financial industry. So I think this is where we are heading in the next few years.
I agree. I think it's a little bit early to talk about best practices, but I can't repeat it often enough, so I'll just say again. I really think that the most important lesson or the most important prerequisite for any blockchain startup is ask yourself very, very carefully, do you need blockchain? I think the vast majority of blockchain projects out there have jumped on the hype. They've seen how much money was raised by a few select successful blockchain companies, and they're just trying it. And I think it's correct to say that the vast majority of blockchain companies out there might have a good solution, but they might not even need blockchain. I think they don't. So people need to figure out whether blockchain is the right technology. Nobody would go into a room today, into a board meeting, and say, hey, you know what, Sybase is going to solve our problem. But it's as ridiculous to say blockchain will solve our problem, because problems get solved by solutions, and blockchain is a technology that can support a solution, but it's not more. It's great. It's a great technology. It's definitely a massive step forward from previous means of storing and interacting with data, but in itself is not a solution. So if you're asking about best business practices, I say see whether the solution you have for the problem you found really requires blockchain.
Thanks. Okay, we know that ISO are working on the ISO TC307, blockchain and DLT standards. So I want to ask the panel, whether do you think that with standards will it help industry with more clarity on how blockchain should be implemented into architecture, interoperability, and operations? Yeah. So is there any take on this?
Well, I always believe one of the requirements to make blockchain really being implemented in any industry is a standardized. But I believe the standard not to be made by certain company. The standard need to be made by the community itself. Because currently, every company try to create their own protocol. And we can see how one of the company make few years ago only we only have a few protocols, but nowadays we have more than 20 protocols offering blockchain solution, and it's true that it's supporting the blockchain industry to be evolve faster, but in the same time, actually, the more protocol, the more confused the market is. So I believe the standardized is something that we need in this market, but it will coming naturally. Eventually, the protocol that not good enough will dying. That's what I believe.
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I attended the inaugural ISO meeting. My impression from that is that it is full of self-interest. One. Two, I was the only blockchain. I was the only person representing a blockchain project in that ISO consisting of at least 100 people in there. And I attended the second one. But the most unfortunate part is that when I, as in NEM, applied to become an associate member of the ISO, we have been stopped. We have been stopped not by the ISO International, but we have been stopped at the level of the national level. NEM was incorporated in Singapore as a foundation. And NEM's charter is to promote and evangelize the development of the NEM blockchain technology in industries, governments, and academia. But the most unfortunate part is that we were stopped at ISO Singapore to represent as a global entity, not just from Singapore, but as a global entity. So if you ask me about the ISO, I have not got a very good opinion of it, although there are a lot of people out there in the ISO making decisions that are of interest only to their own countries or their own industries. And this is the saddest part of it. And I have not attended after the second ISO because I do not believe that they are going to make the blockchain industry change to adopt and adapt what they want to specify it as a standard. And I think what is the biggest challenge that they all will have at the end of the day is that the blockchain industry works in a very decentralized, very different approaches in opinion, in the way things are going to be developed for the future of the industry. Until then, they will have problems trying to standardize. Of course, they will standardize, and then the financial industries will come in and say, look, we adopt ISO 1111, whatever it is, right? And therefore, every blockchain does not and will not comply with it. And so what's going to happen? Someone will comply with it. And these ones are the guys who are designing that in the ISO. And I say to hell with it.
No, I agree with everything that was said so far. My take on ISO certification or any standards is it's too early. It's far too early. Standards are great once you have figured out what is the best way to do things. Look at like mobile phones. It has taken a very, very long time until people figured out that there is one standard for charging mobile phones, and you have a micro USB or USB-C now that would probably work for all mobile phones in the world, and people kind of agreed and said like, okay, you know what, let's just make every charger in the world for mobile phones that, except Apple, they still think that Lightning is cool, but it took a long time before we figured out what is the right technology. If you put in standards too early, then you restrict innovation, because then you don't develop a blockchain platform just to have a nice platform. It's not a piece of art you put on the wall. You develop a blockchain platform to integrate with companies. But if those companies that then demand that you satisfy a certain standard, then you can't innovate. Then you build towards a certain standard, and I think that's too early. In our case, with Poseidon, we are purchasing the largest part of our businesses. As forest conservation, we're purchasing carbon credits. We purchase carbon credits that represent forest conservation in parts around the world. We only buy carbon credits that satisfy the VCS and the CCB standards, which is the Verified Carbon Standard and the Climate, Community, and Biodiversity Standard. And with that, we can make sure that we only buy a certain quality of carbon credits. And there it makes sense. Carbon credits have been around. We know exactly what we want to achieve. There is no one way or the other. It's like you want to support local communities. You want to make sure that trees don't get cut down. You want to make sure that you preserve biodiversity. It's clear cut. Blockchain, as I said, it started with Bitcoin. Everybody thought like, wow, blockchain is a way to transact money. And then people figured out, you know what, you can put medical records on blockchain. It's really cool. How about this? How about... Just look at consensus mechanisms. There are so many different consensus mechanisms out there. You have proof of stake, proof of work, then you've got Byzantine models, and you've got federated Byzantine, and so on. There's a long list, and people still come up with new consensus models. There are universities working on new ways of finding agreement or consensus on a blockchain. I think we need at least another 5 years or even longer before we can formulate ISO certificates in a meaningful way.
For the sharing, all right. Okay, recently there's a PwC global blockchain survey on industry trying to the trend is using enterprise blockchains as compared to public blockchains. So does the panel think that this is the trend going forward, or is there anything that to challenge this status quo, or what do you see that whether enterprise blockchain will go forward will be the trend, or public blockchain will be the trend for industries?
Yeah. The fundamental, I think, I'm not sure how much you know about blockchain, because all of us have been attending conferences after conferences. But the actual definition of the blockchain as a technology and solution is that it's a ledger of records, full stop, right? So ledger of records can be in text, can be in value, can be in balances that you have. It's a record of all transactions. And then what we need to do now is that with respect to whether it's public or private, I would like to redefine that as well. Now, public, as we all probably assume, is that this is something that everybody can just hop onto it, make transactions, come up with a node, put it in some data center or some cloud, and then be a participant in the blockchain. Now, private, while all of us assume that a private blockchain is one where the enterprise will own, operate, and use within its organization, is where most people have that wrong. Because a private network can be a network that is centrally operated for the public consumption of everyone. And that we need to understand. Now, if you extend that and then start saying things like, okay, I'm a bank, I would like to have a private network. Yes, you can have a private network, and yes, you would almost certainly make use of this private network and extend it and offer services and solutions to your customers, your banking customers, to make use of, to make transactions, and to make it your core banking system. And that's where I think, again, looking at what I have been doing for the last 6 years, I'm not seeing things happening in the public domain, which is the public chain, and I'm sure some of you would have heard, is that all crypto coins, that is an extreme opinion, will come to naught, which means all crypto coin will come to zero value because it has no utility. That's what the extreme opinion that you get from outside in an everyday conversation. But I think there is a certain element of truth, because more than 2,500 coins are out there, maybe much more than that. And I can see that there's going to be a massive shakeout in the next year. And you probably see 5 of them standing that is persisting, and maybe another 20, 30 of them straggling along the way, trying to survive. But what you will see is, again, as a natural progression from the use of private chain for public consumption, is that there's going to be much more STOs, which means companies driven by blockchain and companies providing dividend or revenue sharing using tokens as opposed to ICOs. This is one thing that's going to change, and this is one thing where some of these and many of these companies should or would make use of private chains to drive their businesses so that their STO has value.
Well, actually, in some sense, I agree with Lon. In some sense, I not agree with Lon, because I'm always supporting public blockchain, and private blockchain is good in certain way, but we need to know and understand the spirit of blockchain. So I understand that the enterprise have quite a lot of power in this industry, but I always believe community is the one who will decide which one to be used and not to be used. And private blockchain have quite a lot of limitation how it can be evolved when involving a lot of parties to be using it. And public blockchain have an advantage by a lot of player, a lot of institution can use the public chain more easier. And the communities, it's easier for communities to support the public chain instead of the private chain. It's like a question of is it the software that created by open source, the software that created by company is good or the open source is better? This kind of like debatable that we don't know until the time is really come who will be the winner. And about the utility token itself, actually, I believe that it will be survive along the way. It will not going into zero, because the good design of the utility token will make sure the price, the real value of the token itself. I agree that the hype will gone, but the true value of the token itself will remain in the market.
Yeah, really good points. I just echo one point Lon made on cryptocurrencies, just because I love that topic so much. I totally agree with you. I think the vast majority will disappear. There will be a few handful that will survive. I'm a bit more optimistic. I think more than 5, but still, it's not going to be a few hundred, and it's not going to definitely not be a few thousand. It's going to be a few dozen, in my opinion. And the ones that we will see surviving are the ones that really solve a real-world problem. There are so many out there that are just like, you say, okay, it's a cool technology, a cool idea, but what does it do? As Lon said earlier, if it doesn't have a utility, it doesn't have a value, and that's exactly how it is, right? We don't need 1,000 companies all trying to be the next financial system. 1 or 2 of them will have the right solution, and the others will disappear, right? What is funny about that is the media makes such a big deal of this. The media makes a big deal of all these blockchain companies starting and failing. But it really is not a big deal. It's the same in every single industry. Any industry. Look at restaurants. How many restaurants open up and a year later they close down? How many bars open up and close down? Every single industry, anything, any startup struggles, and it's an uphill battle. Few survive, majority disappears. It's normal. Blockchain is no different. That's just, I really like that point, so I thought I'll push that in a little bit more. But to the question of private versus public, I don't think it's one or the other. I think both will survive. They will have different use cases. It depends on what you want to use it for. What does it really mean to have a public or a private blockchain? As Lon correctly said, it's not about who has access to the blockchain. It's about the consensus. It's about who controls the changes to the data. And then it becomes very clear and very obvious in which case you would want to have a public blockchain, in which case you want to have a private blockchain. If you're a bank, well, I think that was a great example, or you're a shipping company, you want to make the information publicly available, but you want to control at which point the data changes. If you're now a social network and you're creating a Facebook on the blockchain, why would that be a private blockchain? You want that to be a public blockchain. You create a blockchain from the people, for the people. The people should choose how data changes on it. It's a natural fit. And I even think that there will be some startups that will use both. They will have a public blockchain and a private blockchain. they will find a use case where the two interact, and they say some data will be controlled by the community, some data will be controlled by the company. I think both will exist. One thing I know for sure is that nothing in our society has more value than data. If we're looking at companies like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and so on, there's a very, very long list of companies that make money with data. It's worth more than any other asset on the planet. So consensus mechanisms or public versus private blockchains that control changes to data will definitely evolve and be a very big value.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for sharing. Okay, there's this concept of DAC, decentralized autonomous corporations, going on. So I'm not sure whether the panel think that how it will affect the compliance and governance of existing corporations, and whether this kind of concept is viable in terms of applying blockchain. Yeah.
I have very strong feelings about that, because I even look at that on a bigger picture, not only corporations but even governments, and I think the way humanity as a whole works. I've been, I was speaking at WEF earlier this year at the World Economic Forum, and I had the pleasure of talking with Kofi Annan, who now, may he rest in peace. I asked him a question. I asked him whether he thinks that passports will soon disappear. So what I meant with that is, we live in a society that is governed in a way and structured in a way that really was fit for purpose for a group of people living in a confined space. When you have people living in a city, living in a country, and staying there all their life, then you need a central authority, and you need structures that govern taxation, freedom of movement, the law, so many different things. And we have a society structure that was built around that, and corporate structures are the same. They were built for a certain way of functioning. But now we have a global world. We live in a time, which is, I think we're very fortunate to live right now, but we live in a time where you're born in one country, you go on holiday in a different country, you spend your money there, you buy properties in a third country, then you retire in a fourth country, and you travel to a dozen other countries. Many of the structures we have today don't work anymore, and that's why governments are struggling, in my opinion. I might be completely wrong. I'm not in governmental sector, but as an outsider, the way I see the world, I think that's a big struggle. And I see the same for corporations. You have corporate structures that have to comply with local regulations wherever they're set up, have to comply with taxation and other things, and they're struggling because companies nowadays need to grow and need to flourish and need to interact with markets around the world. And it becomes very, very difficult. Amazon got fined heavily for not paying their taxes correctly in Europe, which I thought was a little bit harsh, and the way it was put in the media was a little bit harsh, because it's a really incredibly complex landscape. So decentralizing and changing the way corporates, and I think as a next stage also governments work, is a natural progression and a natural change, and humans generally don't like change so much. So there's going to be a bit pushback, and people are going to be a bit worried. But I think we're going to move to a world where exactly that will happen, that we're going to have decentralized structures. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. First thing, I think we need to understand, or at least I perceive it all to be like this. We all belong to the animal kingdom. And in the animal kingdom, it is the king who rules, okay? Which means we are followers, a lot of us. Then you extend that to why governments today require you to be a citizen, and to be a citizen you have to abide by the laws of the land, right? Then you move on to things like a decentralized DAC, right, or DAO. What does it mean? Who owns it? Well, we're all talking about decentralized, right? But if you attempt to do a DAO, like what they did in the greatest disaster of the first DAO, they lost 100 over million at stake, right? And that goes on to the point of the libertarian point of view where we want to be autonomous, we want to do this, we want to do that, but there's only less than 1% of the total population of the world. And 99.9999% of the world's wealth belongs to centralized organizations and entities. Now, you like it or not. Whether it's private, public chain, it doesn't matter, because a private chain will dominate, because 99.999999% of the world's wealth belongs to those people with fiat money, which again is another topic in itself. But what I'm trying to say here is that DAO, how does it work? How does it work in such a way that I, today, Lon Wong, will form an organization that's called DAO Lon, right? And under which jurisdiction am I in? If I decide to do business on it based on consensus opinions of a decision to go forward, and if the DAO decide to invest $1 million in Laszlo's company, thank you, right? When he received those money, he cannot say thank you because he can't cash it out. Because it's illegal.
I will say thank you, trust me.
Yeah, but it's illegal because they will question his legitimacy. Where did the money come from? DAO. DAO is not recognized. It has no law. It is under no jurisdiction, but it's DAO, right? DAO is a concept, is a philosophy, but it cannot come into existence because no government will recognize it. And that's where the problem is. We are a cat chasing its own tail. It's going round and round. It has no beginning and no end because the DAO is not recognized. And it has to be centralized. So how does this work? I mean, if you leave it to the blockchain is not going to decide it for you because it hasn't got a standard of its own that will make us all believe in it, because the blockchain itself has forks. You know, after the DAO, they had a fork, right? And if I'm a bank, I also cannot rely on the public chain, a $100 billion asset bank, rely on the chain and rely on Vitalik to change it and fork it and decide on its 100 billion. No, I wouldn't do it, right? So I think DAO is again a philosophy, a good thought, good experiment, it's a good postulation. I don't think it's going to work for longest time.
Yeah, like it or not, we live in the regulated world, and I agree with Laszlo and I agree with Lon that decentralized structure is conceptual possible, but to make it into really business, to make it really works in the local regulation, there is no way. When we live in the society, we need to follow the rules. That's why human create the government, and I'm a huge supporter of regulation. So I don't believe a decentralized structure of company will be happen. It can run by the concept, but eventually it need to fit into local regulator. So because it need to fit into local regulator, so why we make it so complex by creating decentralized structure? Yeah.
I totally agree, and as I mean, the panel is called Blockchain in the Real World, and that is really going back to a point I now made a few times. We need to find real problems, we need to find real solutions, and that's the whole point. DAO or not DAO, a DAO can surely also be done without a blockchain. There are other ways of doing it. A DAO is not blockchain, right? So again, if we have an application and blockchain is the right solution, fantastic. I mean, look at what we're doing with Poseidon. Who of you listened to my speech yesterday, you understand a bit more. The others, please come to our stand. We'll happily explain you everything in detail, but ultimately, I was deeply concerned about climate change, and I was deeply concerned about the loss of rainforests around the world. Current rate, in 50, 60 years, there are no rainforests left. I don't like that. I like rainforests. I want to go there, and I love all the animals that live there. I want to be able to show them to my children. So I said, okay, that's a real problem. Deforestation is something I want to stop. How do I do that? And then I found a way. I said, like, okay, the carbon markets, can channel funding to forest conservation projects. Fantastic. I want to do something with carbon markets. And then I figured out that the right solution was to use blockchain because the barrier of entry to carbon markets is very high. There is no transparency and no traceability. Doing philanthropic giving today to any charitable organization is, for me at least, difficult because I don't know how much of my money goes where I want it to go, and I don't know whether it goes where I wanted it to go in the first place. So it's really difficult. So for us, it was natural. Okay, we're going to use blockchain because anybody who now puts money into the system will see exactly which carbon credit that money went to, which project was supported, and what happened with the money. It's fantastic. It's gratifying. It makes people happy that they see what happens with the donation they give. So in that case, blockchain was a fantastic fit, and there's no other way of doing it. And as I said, DAO was your question. There might be a good DAO at some point. Will it need blockchain? Maybe, maybe not.
Thank you for the very insightful and fruitful panel discussion. So my personal thought to end this session is, I think blockchain is like a catalyst for the fourth industrial revolution, together with coupled with AI, robotics, IoT. I think blockchain is here to stay. It will help to drive the fourth industrial revolution. And I think, yes, it will benefit industry in the years to come. And I thank the panelists for their fruitful thoughts as well. Yep, so I will end this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, please give a big round of applause one more time for our awesome speakers. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be our last sessions, but then it's still going to be very amazing. So I'm going to call out Ahmad Shadid, Head of Investment and Managing Partner of Arab Folio Capital, LLC, Maury G, Managing Partner, Next Level Consulting, and Manan Mehta, VP of Strategy, Octatrade, and Crypto Angel Investor. And to moderate this session, please welcome Vic Tam, Chief Investment Officer of Pundi X.
Hi.
Oh. Hello, everyone.
I'm going to start.
They're sleeping.
This is the last session. This is actually the money section. Half the people are not here. Anyway, I'm going to introduce, I'd like you guys to introduce yourself, but Ahmad, Manan, Maury. Okay, and then we go from there to here. And then I'll introduce myself.
Hi everyone, my name is Maury G. I'm the managing partner of Next Level Consulting and Levels Ventures. I moved to the Asian continent exactly a year ago from Silicon Valley. And my background is Fortune 500, due diligence, and venture capitals.
Thank you, Maury. Hi guys, I am Manan, VP of Strategy for Octatrade. And I'm a crypto angel investor, ex-advisor to Pundi X, so one of the first few guys who came on board, and I'm glad we're doing so well, really pushing out into the ecosystem. And yeah, I'm a hodler. I believe in the value blockchain is creating, so always trying to find companies that are really going to get blockchain to the masses. So yeah.
Well, I'm not a hodler. We start with this. This is Ahmed Shadid. I'm the founder of Arab Folio Capital, which is the first Arabian crypto fund. Arab Folio Capital is an investment firm aiming only on day trading, active investments. It's like a hedge fund, but for crypto. We founded this this year in 2018. I came from private equity, startups, U.S. stocks trading, a little bit of experience here and there. And the moment I fall in crypto, I just fall in love, like with the first sight. But not in hodling. Well, I hate her now. I divorced hodling, now I'm married to day trading. So yeah.
I'm Vic. I just joined PundiX about 6 weeks ago. Before that, I was the COO for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and that was my last banking career. Before banking was in securities, I was the Chief Risk Officer for the Hong Kong Exchange. So from doing IPOs, now we do ICOs. So I like to start the questioning, and I'm supposed to question, okay? I just want to make it clear. Right? After that, I like the audience to participate as well, right? Trust this, this panel of two bald guys and two guys with a beard, okay, to give you some investment advice, okay? So first question first. I mean, the title is obvious. You know, what do you look for as a VC for tokens, ICOs, startups? What do you look for? What are the 2, 3 key things you want to tell me? Maybe Ahmad, you want to start first?
I would love you to answer your question. Can I just ask them a question first?
Oh, wait a minute. I
so
asked you a question, you're supposed to ask me a question.
Because, guys, this is going to be a fight.
Oh,
this session is a big fight between hodlers and traders and value investors. We're going to fight here. Which one going to prove his position? Well, and which one is the best approach for each one of you? There's none of them is right and none of them is wrong. Each one have a different approach. And that will define the answer to all these questions from my perspective. So you need to know that I'm answering from an active trader perspective. I'm answering from a day trader. Who's here as a day trader? Anyone here a day trader?
Outnumbered.
Nice. And anyone here is a hodler? Oh, that's a big. I should go from now. Like.
See, I told you, you know, don't start that way.
Yeah. Anyone here is a hodler and still making money?
Yes. Yes, very much.
Only you two guys. Okay, so yes, the question again.
This is the problem with the trader. 2 minutes is a long time. The question again is like the title. Look there. See,
yes.
How do VCs look for investments in tokens, ICOs, and startup? What do they look for? Do they look for location?
If you are asking how the VC look, he looks like any VC. When any VC invests in any company, what they look for? They look for team, they look for product, who's building it, who's the advisors, who's in the board, and who's the team and what they are building, and are they really solving a real problem? Do really people need such a product now at this time in history? And it's the same valuation of every other startup. And this is the problem we are facing in this field, that VCs are judging startups like any other startup. Like they're judging all those cryptocurrencies like they are startups. I'm not saying they are not startups, but the thing is they are different. You should look into different things, because the market is not only a product and solving a problem. At the moment, and this is the reality, it's about the community. Who's the community of this coin? Do they have a lot of supporters? Do they have a lot of fans? For me, that's all what I care. If there's a huge community, that's it. They will pump the coin and it will fly in the sky. Like Doggy Coin, guys, come on. What they built? It's a joke. But they have a huge community. And at the moment, with the stage of the market we are in, community is something really powerful. So one of the most important thing is, we look, for me, is a community. How big is the community and how much effective it is, and how supportive they are to their coin, their panel. That's from my point of view.
Thank you for that long answer. You're supposed to be a day trader, and it's supposed to be called Dogecoin, not Doggy Coin. Okay.
Have a dog logo. Anyway.
Emma, thanks for that. That is actually a very interesting perspective, because you bring out, when you say, okay, VCs look for, they treat every crypto or blockchain company like any other company, right? I'm just going to take a step back and say, who is, like, how are we really defining a VC in today's day and age? Okay, because today access to capital has become easy. Anyone can set up a $10 million fund and call themselves a VC, you know, which is not bad, right? If you look at the crypto hedge funds and the average age of crypto hedge fund managers, 26, 27, yeah? Like yourself, you're probably 25, and so am I, which is great. You know, but VCs, the old money, and now I'm going to split that concept into old and smart or old and new money. The old money, yes, definitely, it is looking at companies from the same perspective that they have been looking at it, right? So they've been very fundamental focused. Yeah, the focus is more on fundamentals of the team. Does it have the ability to scale the product? And what else are they capable of doing with the product, right? Yes, it's, of course, it's also going to be about monetization of the product. But some of them are now sort of turning a new leaf and getting bold with their investments. The new money, the new crypto hedge fund managers, they are excited like you are about communities and about what is the product, you know, how soon are they getting it into the market, and you know, what is so innovative about the product, right? Personally, when having had conversations with several VCs from Silicon Valley, and I'm sure Maury is going to definitely add a lot of his perspective on this. Again, the take of every VC in every jurisdiction has become very different. So yes, some of them are looking at teams, some of them are looking at product, some of them are looking at how soon can they turn a profit, you know. And I believe it really is on the entrepreneur today, because I think he has a choice to accept money or not, instead of saying yes to any kind of money that's coming in. So I'm going in with that perspective about, yes, the entrepreneur has a choice today. There are VCs that want to put down $1 million, $2 million, $5 million into a company, just pump it up and make a quick exit. But I think entrepreneurs are getting more conscious about the fact, what is it that they want, who is it that they want, and how can they help them better themselves and better the company in terms of the strategic growth. So yeah, that's sort of my perspective now.
So that's the perspective of a hodl. More hodl, right?
Yes, I mean, as a hodler, I believe that there is value in terms of how transparent the company is in itself, right? Yes, anyone can make promises from day zero, yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to get the product out. Sometimes they don't, and that's fine. And I've had that. I've had a couple of failed hodling investments, and that's okay. You know, but to back the team means to really believe that maybe not this product, okay, they'll come out with something else, and they'll maybe improve the existing version of the product. And that has actually happened. So I've been surprised, and I actually like to spend some more time with the team, get to know them, understand them, and then make an investing decision.
What do you think, Maury?
I was listening to these two guys and I was amazed
Challenge him a
how
bit.
emotional
Challenge
they
him a
are.
bit.
But let's talk about VCs. VCs care about one thing: return on equity. Okay, so that's the main thing. So to reach a better ROE, we look at 4 values: the future of the company, which we call it the scalability of the company, as a product roadmap, as team, geographical expansion, how the product is relevant to different markets. We look at the team, we look at the acceptability of the business, and when we talk about traditional VCs, we look at integration of the business they are investing in and the existing portfolios. So every VC is like doctors, they invest in certain verticals. You find VCs like Owl Ventures investing only in educational startups. You find VCs like Peninsula investing only in financial systems. So they would like to get a company that will integrate with their existing portfolio, because they think of return on equity in terms of their return if the company goes either public or acquired by certain bigger player, or if they're going to sell it to a PE or private equity fund, which will going to take the company and revamp it and sell it again. So when it comes to VCs, you don't have hard. It's a matter of money and return on equity. let's talk about day trader is the same. I think for you it's the same. You take the token today. You told me when we went for shisha 2 days ago to have a casual conversation. So he told me I take the token and I don't keep my position open. So even as a day trader, he cares about his return on equity at the end of the day. So it's a matter of how long you stay with your token. Is it like one night stand or marriage? So when you look at the return on equity, it does matter of what you are putting your money in. So now I just want to add one thing to the topic of the panel, because we didn't see here crypto funds, which is a new player in the game. Crypto funds are either new funds or funds created by existing VCs that don't have the capacity from SEC perspective to invest in digital assets. So we find many players now, angel investors, venture capitals, private equity, and crypto funds. If you've been following VCs and PEs and the ways we're investing in startups, the whole game changed by third quarter last year, when the first time ever in the history, the ICOs as a fundraising mechanism exceeded the investment that startups receive from traditional Silicon Valley and funds. So all what VCs care about is one thing, return on equity, and that will come based on the value of the team. If the team has previous experience, if the team did a successful exit or not, the expansion, which we create as the next level or levels venture in 3 pillars: uniqueness, scalability, and profitability of the business model. So these are 3 things people look for.
Okay, Maury. Sorry, let me add something. To be honest, we are doing a huge mistake by looking at what VC look when they are investing in a startup. Sorry for that, but VC are fucked up. They invest in 10 companies and 1 only succeed. They choose wrong.
I think there's a new word you just said on stage.
I'm so sorry for that. But they choose wrong. We are trying to measure how a VC invests. Guys, who are VCs? I'm sorry for that. Most of their investment, 9 of every 10 VC investment is a failure. They shut down the company, they bankruptcy, they fail. So, with all this team, with all this scalability, with all these things they think about, and they measure, and all these papers, and all these legal things, and all this measurement of valuations, and in the end, every 10 fail. What does this mean? And only 1 project succeed. Why only this 1 project succeed? What's the point? What's the reason? Because they make no sense. Tell me. Maury.
It's come from Maury. I like the perspective and the angle you're taking with what VCs are doing, really, right? But there was another point that Maury mentioned, and he said, yes, VCs are all about ROE, return on equity. Great, I'm all for it. But today we're talking about re-engineering trust in a digital world. Blockchain, very nascent. Let's just say 3 years. Nobody's been building projects beyond that, right? I don't know why there is such a large expectation out of blockchain-based projects and products to deliver value immediately. You know, yes, we understand we live in such a deeply connected world, but why is the focus of VCs and of capital funds how much money this is going to make me, and like how soon can okay, what's my vesting period? 6 months, that's it, I don't want anything more, and I'm going to go sell my tokens if I am not doing equity, but actually just getting digitalized tokens. So that's another one of those questions that I have. Like, why is that the perspective and the angle they take?
Because the risk factor attached to most of the new ICOs or blockchain-based projects, or DLT, because now we've started to see projects based on Hedera hash graph. So I would agree with Ahmed in his passion towards people on how VCs are, as per his perspective, effed up. But my point is, when you see the way VCs used to invest in startups, they used to meet the founders. Anybody here had a startup before? A traditional startup, not blockchain startup. Okay, great. So you'll understand and you'll connect with what I'm going to say. Nobody was trying to raise a fund between 5 mil and 20 mil. A startup would start with 2, 3 co-founders, and we normally look at startups with at least 2 to 3 co-founders, 1 technical, 1 sales strategy, and 1 finance. So they can understand how to value their company before they go and raise fund. They normally start by pitching competition with angel investment group. Anybody here raise money from angel investment group? Great. So you would understand when I say they used to start to raise 200K. They go to Techstars or 500, if you know these names. So they used to start to raise funds through incubators, accelerators, and then they go to angel investment groups, and then they do something with this money other than traveling, and then they go and deliver something, and then they go for a second round. Second round would be trusted by the previous investors plus syndicate, not syndicate of individual, but syndicate of different accredited investors or VCs. And then they go for Series A, B, C, D, E, whatever, till they need fund. If anybody knows Dropbox, anybody is using Dropbox? So it was one of our clients. So these people were raising fund till later stage funding. And then they have one of two ways. Actually, one of three if they're bad. Third option is to shut down. Second option is to go public. Third option is to get acquired by key player. So the funding mechanism from VC perspective and traditional startup was very rational because the amount of money that was raised was very rational, was based on convertible notes, and then the proof of delivery of you as a startup would make you more accredited in front of investors. So after second round, when you are profitable or going green, not green as environmental, but green like starting to make some profit, people would go after you because they can see value for the investment. That trust is not there anymore in the ICO as a funding mechanism because nobody come and try to raise fund in a staging, although they are calling it private sale and pre-sale and public funding or crowdfunding. My point, please don't disrupt. Okay. My point is that trust is not there because some people will come with white paper with a minimum viable product or MVP. Some people will come and try to raise $20 million one time from private sales without showing any proof of being able to deliver what they are committed to the community. 2017 was a great year for fundraising for people who had nothing to sell. 2018 started to hurt. I would not say VCs because VCs came later and they started to invest on tokens and equity. But early stage investors mainly from Asia got hurt because 80% or 90% of the projects they invested in lost its value, not because of the scammers only, but because of those teams who thought they can deliver where they cannot actually deliver. So failing to deliver, scammers getting the investors the same result of not being able to trust the way of ICO as a fundraising. So the one exit that you didn't like out of 10 investment is actually of value for traditional investment because the return on investment would be 25 to 35x. And that based on an actual product, not based on a token manipulation or market making. So there was actual product delivered, rational funding stages starting from seed, convertible notes, Series A, B, C, till you go public or you close it. So with all my respect to the decentralization, it should come with rationale. And you should be questioning every project coming to you and saying, we need to raise fund, everything we have is perfect. You need to check the validity of the team, if they are actually trusted to take it to the next level or not, if they have previous experience or not, if they have a working product or not. So these are key values. It's not just a VC, but if you are multi-millionaire or multi-billionaire because you are a multi-millionaire, and somebody's coming to ask you to put some money in their project and they have nothing but a nice white paper done with Fiverr, you would not trust this money unless you question them rational questions. Thank you.
I agree with you on that one. Like it's definitely asking about rational questions, and I get the perspective of, but I go back to the point of
everybody in this panel is against me. I need some support here.
No, we're not against you. I said I agree with you here, so don't worry. But I go back to the point of when we talk about re-engineering trust, right? And eventually, we're now looking at a world where sometimes we don't trust governments. We sometimes don't trust with what's happening. How do they handle our money if we're paying taxes? What is really happening? There have been questions legitimately raised around that. So the question could go for any institution, right? Like, do you need banking or do you need banks?
As an investor, trust is not enough. Trust plus numbers actually work well. If you look at any startup, you find the technical guys are the most emotional people in the team, and the business people are the most rational people. So we care about trust plus numbers. Facts speak louder than any other thing. Because if I give you a statement, 4 of us would disagree on it. But if I tell you this room has 56 people, nobody can disagree if the numbers are actually accurate. So let's agree on when it comes to investment, people are not supposed to be emotional. People are supposed to be rational. trust must be there because you trust people with your money and you trust people with their experience to deliver certain expectations.
Just hope that data was time-stamped, okay? Like, again, I don't trust if there's 56 people who agree to that. Kidding.
See what other hidden questions we have.
I love being a moderator here. I don't really have to ask questions. Just let him do the talking. Can you guys continue? No, let me ask you this. I think in my mind, for a VC, when you start looking at companies that you want to buy equity or buy their tokens, the fundamental, most important thing to me, related to trust, is the management team. Okay, how much importance do you pay on that? That for me is my number one item, right? So I'm just curious on your thoughts. Where does it rank? I know it's important. Where does it rank in your books? And what do you look for? The management team.
Give it as importance 8 from 10.
8 from 10. Okay. What's the missing 2?
No, I mean the management team as a rating of how important it is. It's not all. It's not one thing, but it's 8 from 10. It's not like extreme. This is, but it's very important.
Right.
Because in the end, sorry, we can't take over the company and kick him out, and we can get a new CEO.
Oh, I see.
If we have majority. But yeah, it's important. They are gonna lead the car. So, yes.
What do you think, Mo?
I just think it's a 10 on 10. Like, without a doubt, it's the team. It starts with the team because you've got to trust in the person who's building the product, right? Like, we have several amazing examples in our blockchain and crypto world where, yeah, these guys promise a lot, but, you know, what really happens behind closed doors and no one knows. So it's all about spending time with the team, and that's the angle that I do take. You know, got to spend enough time to get to know the team, to really believe what is their vision. It may not necessarily align with yours, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the right ability and the capability to build something. One of the factors I think even within the team that you're looking for is, even if the guys may not have 20 plus years experience within that industry, even if they have, let's say, 3 to 5 years, I think it warrants an opportunity. You know, you need to give them a chance, you know, to at least go out there and build. So, you know, at some point, somebody has to believe and back them. So I think for me as an angel investor, it just starts at that level. So yeah, I'd love to get Maurice.
I will give it 10 out of 10 as well as you, because the team is the most important asset of any business. When people acquire a company, acquire it for the management. And when you don't like the management, you normally change the management. So people are the reason of what we're doing. So as I mentioned before, we look at startups with technical, sales, and finance person, because these people can turn any messed up startup into a success story, like what Steve Jobs did with Apple. Any bad team can take a great technology and screw it, like what Alta Vista team did and Netscape Navigator did and Yahoo did. So team, I would give it 10 out of 10.
Wow, it seems like a unanimous decision. It's one of those unusual questions I'm going to ask, right? What's the controversial question I should be asking? I want to leave it to you guys to actually ask some questions.
I would like to keep it to the audience to ask us some
we'd
questions.
actually love to open this
I
up.
believe we have some investors, some projects.
Okay, so
So
the last session.
one
So,
from
yeah.
the audience, one from us, one from the audience, one from us.
give it
So
all to
we'll
them.
get first one from the audience.
Any questions?
Any questions from the audience? We'd love to.
He's too excited. Anybody want to ask a question?
Go for it. He wants to ask.
Can we have a mic there?
That's fine.
That has booby traps.
Actually, I've got 2 questions.
Okay,
the first question that came to me was you was asking about management team, but I'm more concerned about valuation, especially in the case of ICOs.
Sorry?
Would
I
you,
can't hear you, sorry.
Valuations.
Valuation, yeah.
Yeah. Would you typically have a quantitative model in terms of valuing it? Because a lot of things that you have mentioned are more qualitative in nature.
I mentioned it's very important to have one of the co-founders to understand finance, because the finance person will be the best one to value the company, pre-money valuation, if anyone understands financing here. And that will also decide the best strategy to raise fund, either by selling token or getting debt or getting equity. if the startup team is starting by giving equity, we feel they are in trouble. If they start by debt or token, we feel that they believe in what they're doing, and they don't want to give an equity because they believe only with this money they can turn it up, not to lose part of the risk. So it depends on the finance person, if they have someone to manage the revenue model, and if they have an actual product, they can follow many ways of valuing a company like DCF or discounted cash flow. But without someone who understands finance, or at least an advisor who understands finance, they cannot give a proper pre-money valuation. We love some projects, they come to us, and they come to us with a number that they just thought of as a pre-money val, and that's not how it works. So your question is very valid. Like, they need to understand how to value their business, and that's not based on ideas, but based on facts and numbers, money in, money out, and projection.
True, yes, I mean, questions makes a lot of sense. We've been talking more qualitative stuff here. But when you look at the cold hard metrics, numbers, yes, it's very difficult to value a crypto startup, because how do you look at it? They're not generating any revenue. So you're not doing a cash flow based valuation, right? So are you doing something based on the token's value, to do with the fluctuation in its value, the volatility? I think there are a lot of statisticians, guys out there trying to figure out the right model around this. There's a couple of very interesting influencers within the space who have suggested some models, but I don't think that we have something set in stone. I think just the way we look at the financial world, it's changing. The very fabric of it is changing. I don't think we're looking towards institutions, towards big guys to give us something like this, right? Look at Bitcoin. It came from somebody who nobody knows who he is or who they are or whatever it might be. But I think the community power. I think what Ahmed was referring to in terms of community power, not just to do with one particular project. I think us as a community as whole can perhaps come up with a very valid, logical, reasonable model, so that the real ventures can stand out from the ones that are all fluff. So yeah.
I just need to add one thing here. When it comes to money, again, with all my respect to everyone in the panel, look at Apple as a company. If you look at the accounting or balance sheet or community value of Apple, it's 50 billion, but the actual valuation of Apple is above trillion or 850 billion. So you need to consider certain goodwill and certain branding values, especially with startups. You look at PondiX as a company and the way they are doing their marketing, the way they are developing their products, the way they are educating the community, and look at other startups that we don't hear of them and they think they have an amazing thing. They might have it, but they don't have the right marketing strategies, they don't have the right sales strategies, right community engagement. So many factors will impact the valuation, not just the community, not just the balance sheet, but the valuation has many factors. If you like, we can discuss it one-on-one after the panel.
So before answering your question, I want Mr. Vic to answer the question how a private equity do a valuation, and then I'm going to combine that all together with my own point of view.
See, they're not following the rules. See, I'm supposed to be asking the question. That's why this is the last panel, right? I don't believe in a lot of things. I've done this for quite a while, for 30 years. I have invested bad investments. I have fantastic investments as well. I don't believe in a lot of things that people say. For example, people talk about technical analysis. To me, I'm very technical analysis on tokens, okay? Technical analysis for stocks has been there for a long time, right? But technical analysis for tokens trading, I don't know. Because that one, so far, from what I've seen this year, does not work. Okay, if it worked, a lot of people would not have lost money. So I think it's just trying to tell people, if you all believe in technical analysis, it's a consensus. We believe together that it's going up or going down. Right? So I don't believe in a lot of that. In terms of valuation, it's very, very subjective. I have a master's in finance. I'm not saying that to be proud, but I'm telling you, as an example, where I was, in my career, I had, was part of Morgan Stanley. We represented the Hong Kong Futures Exchange for the merger of Hong Kong Stock Exchange, which was JP Morgan. They also had their MBA in finance. We sat down, our valuations were way away, right? Nobody can agree. You just have to sit down, come with a number, again by consensus, and who speaks louder, you decide on a value. And that's how it's created. Values, that's how it's created. You have people who are trusted, like the term you said just now, trusted. Trusted means credibility, right? So if you listen to a credible person, you give the person with trust, that person will say this, and then everything, all the models, the mathematical models are there just to prove that point. And that's how consensus is made, and that's how valuations are made. At least I would say in the token world, or the token ICO world. It doesn't apply in property, for example, right? Property, you look at sales, recent sales in that area, right? So it depends what you're talking about in terms of valuation, right? But at least for tokens, for startups, for ICOs, everything matters. It's my number one choice is still management team, right? And again, valuing it a reasonable product, a product that's, there is demand, there is a purpose, it solves something, that's very important, right? And then value it properly and it will go. So, does that satisfy your
honest,
question?
I have nothing to say. Really. He said everything.
That's a very good summary.
No, really, yeah. He said everything, and everyone said everything. Mori and Manan, and I really can't say anything more. I can't not agree with.
Can we have one more question from the audience?
But one thing I don't agree is technical analysis. But everything else I agree.
Did anyone have any other questions?
I wanted your view on, you talk management team and you talk business model, technology.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. We speak about management team, we speak about technology, we speak about business model. One thing I'd like your thoughts on is geography. Meaning that when you look at the amount of investment that Silicon Valley VCs make, you would think that they are global players, but a lot of the investment is, 30 miles around Silicon Valley. Same story in Dubai, same story in Singapore, same story in Amsterdam. Why is this? Why is it that we have a world that's globalized, but investments that are localized?
Yeah, Adnan, right?
That's correct.
Thank you, Adnan. Nice to meet you again. So let me answer this from one point. When I address what we need to have to invest in a good project, I mentioned scalability. And part of the scalability was the geographical expansion. If the team and the investment doesn't understand it well, they normally do it locally with a local partner. And look at this from two apps, transportation apps and dating apps. What works in America, like Uber and Lyft, doesn't work in Asia that much, and a big proof of that Grab acquired Uber in Southeast Asia, right? So the management and the investment need to be trusted by a local partner. Look at dating app, OkCupid, Tinder, Bumble, eHarmony. What works in America doesn't work in Europe, doesn't work in Asia. So the investment and the market acceptability is based on a consumer trend or a buying behavior. So that will impact the way VCs invest, and that's why they do syndicates. They normally like to invest in a local player with a local fund to make sure that they have a complete understanding of regulatories, buying behavior, and how they can penetrate that market very well. Without having the local understanding of the market, anybody can fail.
I think what Maury is saying is tangibility is an important factor when it comes to making investments. The subject here we have is what VCs look for. But the beautiful aspect of ICOs is that today a common man can invest. Even if it's $100, I can invest in a company that's sitting in North America, which normally I would not be able to. I'm referring back to 2017. Now that the SEC has taken its stance much more, made its stance much more tougher, the regulatory world is waking up to how investments and money is flowing around the world via virtual currencies. I think that's getting very interesting. But it's a great question. It is about why investments are so localized. And I think that ICOs and tokens are sort of taking that global now. Anyone sitting in any part of the world can actually make, if verified, done the KYC AML as required, can invest in a company elsewhere, a project he believes in, project that he thinks might strike rich and make him more money. But it then comes down to the fact that how much of a loss can you actually are willing to take or can take, right? So
the point of taking geography as a base point, one of the points to do evaluation, is something, yes, we maybe forgot to mention, or even didn't come to my head. And it's actually true. Geography is an important, let's say the target audience, where are they from, and what's the reach size, the market size, and it's important when we do evaluation. When I'm evaluating an Uber-like app in China, I will give it evaluation, not when I do the same for, let's say, Dubai. I mean, it's a different size, different market. The size is different, so of course that will affect the valuation. But also the other point you mentioned is why VCs don't invest in anything, or lessly invest in, or it's restricted more to the area where they are in, and the reason is, again, we are back to the same thing. Who are the VCs, VCs are old people who have money, and they just, from the old school. Well, the new VCs are something different, but I mean, most of the VCs, they fail 9 out of 10. Okay, one works. Like gambling, you go in Vegas, one works. But in the end, who are VCs again? Their choices are always, well, mostly wrong, and they invest because they are near to them. It's a psychology thing. He's near to me. I mean, the office is there. I'm lazy. I don't want to go somewhere really far to check on the company and to overboss them and make sure I know everything that's happening in the company. And this is something a VC would like to know. And this is the old school. And this is now start to go and to fade. And in the end, what is happening at the moment is a new generation of investment. And people would be more educated about how big each market in the world is, and by themselves they will invest through these tokens and through all these ICOs, and this is what is happening at the moment. Because startup founders are really, they need freedom. Okay, for example, me, I live in Jordan, I have a startup, I cannot raise money. From where I'm going to bring this money? If I'm going to raise if I'm going to raise $5 or $4 million from a VC, they will take 60% of my money, my company, of equity, if I even found a VC. And this is like, it's done. We need to be free from this as a startup founder. I need something new. I need money from outside. This is not my market. This is where I'm not supposed to be. And this has made a revolution, which with the ICO we see.
Exactly, and the VC world is very different in North America versus Europe versus Southeast Asia. So we're opening up, as he said. So that's the value add that we have.
I will just add with one comment. As far as why it's localized, I think that was your question. Through my personal investment experience, it's very emotional, right? You invest emotionally. You need to feel, you need to touch, you need to talk, you need to know what you're investing. So that's why localized, because you got to feel it, right? It's in you. We run out of time. I want to say thank you to the panel. Please give them a hand.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll be outside if any more questions are around. We're happy to have a chat.
If you wonder to hodl or to trade, just come talk to me.
Yeah.
I'll convince you, I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Ahmad, Mori, Manan, and Vic for ending this series with a very interesting session. And that session concludes the 2018 XBlockchain Summit 2018. On behalf of all the committee and crew behind XBlockchain Summit, I would like to thank all of you the participants for your enthusiasm throughout this event. Also, special thanks to our speakers who have shared their knowledge and expertise for the past 2 days. The 2018 XBlockchain Summit is co-organized by Pundi X and supported by the Indonesian Blockchain Association. Also, a special thanks to our platinum sponsors, NEM, Binance, Poseidon, and Fexanium. And thanks to our bronze sponsor, BitZ. Don't forget, after this at 8 p.m., there will be XBlockchain Awards and Party by the Beach, open for all participants. It has been an absolute honor for me to be your MC for the past 2 days. I will see you again at the XBlockchain China and Brazil. Have a good evening. Thank you.